Welcome to the 2025 Annual Breast Cancer Summit. I'm Kristen Thorne, investigative reporter, now with Law and Crime Network. I've been hosting this event for the last 10 years, so thank you so much to the team and to Janine for having me. There's something very, as I was driving here this morning and walking in, there's something very comforting about returning to an event year after year. It's a reminder that life is good, right? That we're here, we're healthy. Maybe when you're in the news, you look at life differently, although I'm sure a lot of people in this room see life differently as well. So it gives you an appreciation for things that keep going every year. I do look forward to this gathering every year because it is educational and inspiring. This program supports awareness, education, and advancements in breast cancer care, from prevention and detection to treatment and reconstruction. Each year, we bring together hospital leaders, clinicians, industry experts, and the breast cancer community to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and strengthen the connections that matter most in this fight. One area we're spotlighting today is breast reconstruction. Fittingly, tomorrow is BRA Day, Breast Reconstruction Awareness Day, a national initiative that promotes education, awareness, and access for women who have undergone mastectomy. We'll hear from the expert physicians of New York Plastic Surgical Group about reconstruction options, as well as from survivors who remind us that the journey is about far more than physical recovery. Our program today, this is new, will also explore AI in breast cancer detection, breast cancer and psychological well-being, strategies on how to preserve fertility, and the point of view of a surgical PA. We have three very special survivors sharing their personal stories, including our keynote speaker, best-selling author Geralyn Lucas. In fact, it was suggested that Geralyn Lucas be the next keynote speaker last year at this event, after then keynote speaker, my former colleague Stacey Sager of ABC, made the recommendation right here at the podium. It's actually a very funny story that Stacey shared with us. Here's the clip.
I still talk to the very first woman who helped me in 1998, Geralyn Lucas. She's gone on to write amazing books about her life during and after cancer. You ought to get her here because she's hilarious, okay? She wrote a book called Why I Wore Lipstick to My Mastectomy. She literally showed me her breasts in a public bathroom in New York City back in 1998 so I wouldn't be afraid of reconstructive surgery. She was diagnosed in her 20s and I was diagnosed at 30. You meet the best people. It's like the sorority that you never had a rush, but you know you're just in.
I want everybody to know I actually saw Stacey over the weekend. It was the Emmy Awards, and she brought one home for a documentary on her fight, 3 cancers, 3 decades. So I'm just really, really happy for her. By the way, yes, absolutely. She looks great. She's doing well. And in fact, that piece done by my very good friend, Emily Hartman, the editor, is extremely talented, also won a Gracie this year, which is a very hard award to win. So I'm very, very happy for Stacey that throughout all that, she had this triumphant moment. Throughout today's program, I encourage you to ask questions, network, and take advantage of the many community and health resources available. And while artificial intelligence and the power of Google continue to evolve with all this information at our fingertips, nothing can replace the insights of real experts or the shared experiences of survivors, caregivers, and loved ones. That's the power of being here together. We will be doing Q&A after our clinical discussions. However, if we're unable to get to your question or if you have general feedback you'd like to share with us, please be on the lookout in your email for a post-event survey. It is going out this afternoon after the event. Your feedback helps us make next year's program even better and ensures your questions get answered. Today's presentations are being filmed, and an edited version will be available in a couple weeks on breastcancersummit.com. Help us spread the word when you post about this event. Please use hashtag BreastCancerSummit, and also please tag at nyplasticsurgical. Lastly, we have some amazing vendors here, as we do every year, including our sponsors who are instrumental in making this public service event possible. Please join me in thanking our presenting sponsor, Allergan. Thank you very much. Allergan is a longtime contributor to this event, and we appreciate their ongoing support. Allergan is an AbbVie company that develops, manufactures, and markets a portfolio of leading brands and products around the world, including breast implants, biological mesh used in many types of reconstructive surgery, including breast reconstruction and products such as face injectables, body contouring modalities, skincare, and more. I'd also like to thank our survivor sponsor, BD. Thank you very much. BD is one of the largest global medical technology companies in the world and is advancing the world of health by improving medical discovery, diagnostics, and the delivery of care. Their collection of bioregenerative scaffolds supports, repairs, and reinforces soft tissue in plastic and reconstructive surgery procedures. In addition, their Surgical Solutions division supports options for infection management during surgery. We invite you to spend some time visiting the exhibitor area to learn about medical and community resources available to you during the program break. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Tommaso Adana to the podium. Dr. Adana is a board-certified plastic surgeon and president of New York Plastic Surgical Group, the founding organization of this event.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And thank you for being here for 10 years with us. So please, a round of applause for you. Two things before I start. If I was this tall, I probably would have played in the NBA, and I may not have been here today. Just kidding. All joking aside, so we're really excited to have everyone here today. We're excited that it's wonderful to see so many faces here, survivors, patients, our providers, and all of us that are here to learn, connect, and move forward together. Today, breast cancer remains among the most commonly diagnosed cancer in women. But what's changing is who it's affecting and how we are responding. Recently came across an article that was published in the American College of Surgeons. It's up, great. So what we're looking at here is some recent data that shows breast cancer rates are rising slightly each year, about 1% overall. A bit more alarming, or to be aware of, is the fact that in younger patients, younger than 50, that rate is going up at a slightly higher rate, potentially 1.4%. In terms of patients that are under 45, they consist about 10%, or they make up 10% of patients that are being diagnosed currently. So what does this mean for us? Is this an opportunity to sound the alarm, or does this speak to the fact that we are actually evaluating or examining the opportunities to evaluate patients earlier on? It's really a call to awareness. More and more young women are being diagnosed at a younger age because they're being informed. They're attending conferences such as this, and they're getting their education, they're seeing their geneticists, they're getting genetic testing, they're being very proactive about screening, and also providers are more engaged in terms of earlier detection. While younger patients may face more aggressive cancers potentially, they have complex decisions also at hand. How do they manage fertility? How do they plan for family, work, and life balance remaining there? The great news is that when caught early, it's a very treatable diagnosis with a greater than 93% survival after 5 years. Advances in reconstructive surgery, medication, and precision therapies continue to improve not overall survival, but also quality of life during this time. More women than ever are living full and vibrant lives after the diagnosis. Despite the diagnosis, access to care, early detection, and support still vary across communities. In terms of what we see here with regards to gatherings, we're very fortunate here in the New York area. We have access to care, we have access to information that many other parts of not only our country, but also the world may not have that access. some countries, breast reconstruction isn't available. In some settings, there are no local providers to help patients with that reconstruction. That's one of the reasons that we're proud to partner with Research International. Research International was initially introduced to us via Tom Davenport, who's played a role in that organization for, I want to say, over 2 decades, possibly 3 if I had to guess, but he can tell us later. In terms of what Research International provides, they have a breast cancer care program that they've spearheaded in Vietnam. It's a groundbreaking initiative. It's the first of its kind in the region. It provides life-changing reconstructive surgery for patients, but not only does it take care of patients and do the operation, it also is an opportunity to educate other surgeons on how to do reconstruction. The idea that you can now propagate that education throughout the system means breast reconstruction would be more readily available for patients in Vietnam. I do invite you to take a moment to learn more about this mission. Research is here today, so members of the research team are here, and they're in the exhibit area, and they're happy to share additional information about their program. So as we begin the summit, let's remember behind every statistic is a story, behind every breakthrough is a person, and behind every person is a community, one that learns, supports, and never gives up. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation today, helping to shape the future where women everywhere are afforded the chance to survive and thrive. We do have a tremendous lineup today, and I'm very excited about our first speaker. For those of us that attended this last weekend's conference for the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, AI played a huge role in the lecture series that were available. And I'm excited to now announce Dr. Lori Margulies, who's the Vice Chair of Breast Imaging at the Mount Sinai Health System. She'll be speaking on artificial intelligence and breast cancer detection. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Margulies. Thank you so much.
Good morning, and let me set this timer here. Okay, now we're good. So I love talking about artificial intelligence and early detection, and artificial intelligence is really a tool that helps the radiologist help the patient by detecting breast cancers earlier and decreasing callbacks, as well as monitoring the quality of mammograms so that every patient can be assured of a quality mammogram. We've been using artificial intelligence at Mount Sinai now for about 3 years, so I want to tell you a little bit about our experience. Digressing a minute, these are my conflicts of interest. Let's look at some of the literature. So what are the problems with mammography in 2025, and how can artificial intelligence help the breast radiologists? There's a workforce shortage. Unfortunately, there are not enough people to read all the mammograms that exist. Interpretations are subjective and definitely prone to human error. Sometimes we find one cancer, but there are really 3. Maybe the phone is ringing, or we just don't understand. Readers vary considerably in experience and performance. Recall rates vary, positive predictive values vary, and cancer detection rates vary. So how can AI help? In countries where double reading is used, for example, most of Europe, AI is replacing one of those readers, so therefore increasing the workforce dramatically. It also decreases recall rates and increases cancer detection. So if we look at the Messiah trial, it's a randomized controlled non-inferiority screening accuracy study. When people use artificial intelligence, the accuracy of mammograms increases, and that's really important. But it's not perfect. There can be a bias. There can be a bias in the data set. Maybe cancers in different groups of people look different. Maybe there's a bias where people just automatically believe the computer instead of their own judgment. There are many sources of bias. So let's look at some cases from our health system. And digressing one moment, so every single mammogram performed at Mount Sinai gets artificial intelligence at no cost to the patient. So if we look at this baseline mammogram, those of us who are used to looking at mammograms can relatively quickly say, this looks okay. But what about 18 months later? Has it changed? So I would draw your attention to the left breast here. Does it look different? Artificial intelligence says, oh my goodness, there's an elevated risk of cancer in this breast. And it gives it a number from 0 to 100. So a 91 is something we don't see very often. So our eye is called to this, and we are very worried. So really, there's a relatively subtle developing asymmetry in the left breast. Not so easy to see, and artificial intelligence would help the radiologist find it. We can find it on ultrasound. For those of you who are used perhaps to ultrasound, you can see this color stuff means it's very vascular. And we use ultrasound artificial intelligence as well. So we can mark that spot on ultrasound, and it's actually a biopsy-proven malignancy that has spread. So let's look at this easy case. So this also is elevated with a high number of 86. We can see this mass here. These little white dots are calcifications. You can see these calcifications. All these little white dots are cancers. So it's an invasive ductal carcinoma with ductal carcinoma in situ. If we keep going with other nice, easy cases, 86 again, high number, really, really high number. And even if you're not used to looking at mammograms, you can see that there's a spot. There's a white spot sitting here, and that spot is irregular. It's not sharp, but the margins go in and out, in and out. So we're worried about that spot. But what's the rub here? Here's the ultrasound, and it's an invasive ductal carcinoma. But 18 months earlier, our old computer-aided detection system had also marked it, but it had been ignored. Human error. It was dismissed. So how many cancers are we going to find where artificial intelligence or computer-aided detection found it the year before, but it had been dismissed? So UCLA actually looked at this, and they found that a lot were due to reading error. Then there were and some there were technical errors. But clearly, we need to learn how to use artificial intelligence, need to know act and when not to act. Artificial intelligence is not going to find all cancers. It helps, but it doesn't always mark the obvious. This is the kind of patient you don't want to see. This is the patient who comes into the emergency room with a big cancer that's coming out of the breast, very often bleeding, brings the patient into the emergency room. The artificial intelligence gives it a low probability of being cancer. Are we going to believe that? Obviously not. We're going to use our judgment. If we use ultrasound, we see this mask is very vascular. All these colored lines are all abnormal vessels. It's palpable, but even our ultrasound artificial intelligence says it's benign. So we've got two different artificial intelligence saying it's benign. Are we going to believe the computer? Absolutely not, because we know what truth is, and this is a picture of the patient. She's an elderly woman with a palpable mass protruding and bleeding. It's obvious that we don't need artificial intelligence for this case, but we can't just use AI. We have to use our clinical judgment for this obvious cancer. AI doesn't find everything. That's why I still have a job. AI will not replace the radiologist anytime soon, because even when it says low, it's 1 in about 2,000 to 3,000 cancers it will miss. And it misses other things. So we look here, this little kind of not very prominent dot, this line here, is new. So new always rings a bell in our head. Why is something changing? Artificial intelligence says, oh, it's fine. But what do we say? No, it's different. We do spot compression, it persists. We went to biopsy it with a stereotactic biopsy, and it's lymphoma. So it's not breast cancer, but we find other things. We can find lymphoma, we can find metastatic disease. So artificial intelligence has to be taken with a grain of salt because it's not perfect. Most of those of us used to reading mammos would look here and say, oh my goodness, there's something here with spiculations, lines coming out of it. We're worried about it. But artificial intelligence says, oh, don't worry. But what are we going to do? We're going to recall it. And we're going to look. So here's a mass. It's this dark thing that looks a little irregular. It's irregular out here, and it's very vascular. And our ultrasound AI is also worried. It says it's malignant, and indeed it's an invasive ductal carcinoma. So remember, the same slide as before. AI can help in the hardest to find breast cancers, but can't overcome technical errors. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But sometimes it saves the day. Sometimes it finds a cancer that you may have missed. For example, here's a 64-year-old woman. This says it's an intermediate chance of cancer. So the AI is thinking, well, the spot that the computer is marking has about a 1 in 200 chance of being a cancer. So if we look here, we see this spot. It looks a little darker. It's whiter than everything else. Maybe there are some speculations in it. Here's the tomo. Okay, maybe there's something there. We recall the patient. We get the ultrasound. Ultrasound is so much easier sometimes. Here's this dark spot, right? Even if you're not used to looking at ultrasound images, you can see this dark, irregular thing. Why is it there? Why isn't it looking just like this normal tissue? It's a cancer. And our ultrasound artificial intelligence actually says it's probably malignant. So we didn't really need this ultrasound AI. We were going to biopsy regardless. But it's nice to have, and sometimes when patients are reluctant to have biopsies, they like seeing the artificial intelligence. They like knowing that the computer also is concerned. So we have to be very careful when we dismiss artificial intelligence high scores, unless it's obvious. So here's an intermediate. Okay, maybe we're worried, maybe we're not. There's some kind of little star forming in here, looks like. Okay, but the AI marked it. We ignored it. We said it was normal. But 1 year later, the score is even higher. And if we look at it, it looks much worse. It's angrier. These lines are coming out more. It's more spiculated. And again, ultrasound is relatively easy. We have this dark hypoechoic anti-parallel mass. And again, the ultrasound AI tells us it's probably malignant. So we are considerably worried about that. So sometimes, what do you know? Sometimes you gotta trust the AI, even if you don't really appreciate the finding. And when you read these things, you have to be really careful about dismissing the high artificial intelligence marks. And again, the third time I'm going to show this slide, remember, there's lots of reasons, but AI can find cancers earlier than we can many times. So what's the problem with this case? One's in 81, one's in 83, fine, we ran it through twice. But what's the problem? These images are 1 year apart. We missed the opportunity to diagnose that cancer 1 year earlier because we dismissed the AI mark as not concerning. But here's the image. Again, it looks like a sun. Here's the center. Here's the lines coming out from it. It had been seen, but it appeared to go away when we did spots, so somebody ignored it. Here it is 1 year later. You see that same star, sun, looking at it with the lines coming out. And now it's an elevated at 83. And again, our ultrasound is really easy. We see this dark hypoechoic mass that's irregular. And again, our ultrasound artificial intelligence is telling us that it's probably malignant. So what people have said is almost 40% of cancers are marked on AI on the prior exam, similar to our case. So that's really important when we look at artificial intelligence marks. We have to take them really seriously. But what's the rub? There's a lot of false positives. Some of them we can easily dismiss. So if we look at this, we might say, oh my goodness, maybe it really found something. But you know what? It's really a mole. It's just something on the skin, totally not significant. Actually, I'm sorry, it's an epidermal occlusion cyst. That's what it actually was. So, again, here's a 69. Okay, we're worried about it. Here's our images. We look, something is here. Maybe something is here. The score is even higher here. We do our ultrasound. Yet again, ultrasound AI tells us this is probably malignant and it's an invasive lobular carcinoma. Here again, high score. There's the finding. Again, looks like a star, looks like a star. It's all the way up to an 85 on the screening mammogram. And again, our AI, artificial intelligence for ultrasound, says it's probably malignant. So what are some of the problems with AI? Scars are often false positives. People that have had lumpectomies, those lumpectomy scars are very often false positives. When comparison is fully implemented and allowed by the FDA, hopefully this will improve. But for now, lots of scars are getting these intermediate scores, and we have to look to be sure that it's just an evolving scar and there isn't a recurrence at the surgical site. Other false positives can be easy to dismiss because we can compare very easily. So even though this has a high score of 69, it's been stable for 15 years. Anything that's stable for 15 years is nothing to be concerned about. So what about this? So just like computer-aided detection, sometimes the artificial intelligence will mark vascular calcifications. So vascular calcifications are not indicative of cancer. However, they can be indicative of early atherosclerotic disease or late atherosclerotic disease. So I'll digress. So if you look at CBS News on the 15th, so in a couple of days, you will see a Mount Sinai patient talk about her mammogram story of coming for a mammogram, being told she had breast arterial calcifications, seeing one of our cardiologists, going on a treadmill. So if you've ever seen a patient have a stress test, it's where you run on this treadmill faster, 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 while somebody is watching your EKG. So this time they said, stop. They ran and called the cardiologist, immediately took her to the cardiac catheterization lab, blah, blah, blah. 2 days later, she's having coronary artery bypass surgery that saved her life. So that's going to be on CBS News on the 15th. Do we run all cases? Absolutely. So every single mammogram. So here's an example of our localization. So what's a localization? So that's where we found a cancer that nobody could feel, and we're going to mark the spot for the surgeon. So here's the original outside mammogram. Here are the calcifications. Everything looks perfect. We've got the clip in good position. Everything's fine, but what the heck is this 83 doing down here in the middle of this localization? So during the localization, the second group of calcifications was seen by AI, but not by multiple physicians who had looked at these mammograms already. So the surgery was done, and then later we went back and did all kind of extra views. And again, we're worried about these calcifications. So now we biopsy them. So now she's back in the operating room because she's got another site of DCIS. So what can we learn from this case? Look at the AI as soon as you possibly can. Maybe you want to address a potential issue at the time of the original surgery. Don't be afraid to go back and do the right thing. Sometimes you just have to say, wait a second, we may have made a mistake. AI, even in a procedural case or postoperative case, can find potential cancers that the human eye missed. And be very wary of satisfaction of search. So what else can we do? So we have to learn how to dismiss these false positives and do it correctly and accurately. Comparisons absolutely help. Vascular calcifications need to be addressed. Prior benign biopsies will often show up on AI as positive. Sometimes there's just silly marks. Like if the technologist has not put the nipple in profile, it will mark the nipple. But those things take relatively little time. So what else is coming? So again, vascular calcifications, they are important. So this is that same patient, it's mild breast arterial calcification, and this is the story that I had just told you. So the Minerva study is a study of breast arterial calcification, gradation, and cardiovascular disease done out of Kaiser in California, looking at over 5,000 women who were in the 60 to 79-year-old group. People that had breast arterial calcifications were more likely to have heart attacks, strokes, or to die from cardiovascular disease. Quantification matters, and this can be done by artificial intelligence, and it makes a big difference. For each quartile you go higher, the more likely you will have that heart attack, stroke, or early death. The patients want AI. They want to know that there's that second opinion being given by the computer. It's important. And we want the second opinion from AI. I'll often say, you know what, AI is a physician wellness tool for me. Because if I'm reading a group of mammograms and I have a whole bunch where AI tells me there's a low probability of cancer, I can rest a little easier, knowing that I might find a cancer, but unlikely. And conversely, those that are marked as elevated, I know I either have to dismiss it easily because it's something that's been stable or it's a silly thing, or I have to recall the patient to work it up. So with that, I'd like to thank you for this great invitation. It's nice to be back on Long Island. I grew up on Long Island. So the goal is not to beat the machine for us, but to use AI to help our patients stay well and to work with that tool. And with that, I'll be happy to take your questions.
Hold on. Yep. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Anne, and I'm from the Women's Center at St. Francis. And my question to you is, with AI, have you found an increase in callbacks for additional imaging?
Actually, we found the converse. So we don't find an increase in callbacks, but we find about a 2% decrease in our callback rate. And why is that? Because when artificial intelligence is saying low, those little things that we worry about, those one view asymmetries, meaning we see a little spot on one view but not the other view, we can dismiss. And we feel fine about it. We sleep at night. And our patients are happier not coming back.
Super, thank you. And will this series be recorded? Is it available to us? It is. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
Great talk. What I found interesting was the false negatives from AI. I've always thought it was augmentative to radiologists and finding things that you didn't see, but how much does it influence when AI says there's nothing there? How much does that influence a radiologist say, oh yeah, there's nothing there, and trust that?
That's where experience comes in, and it comes in learning how to use AI, because we have to know that low is not zero. Low means low. So 1 out of every 2,500 mammograms that it says low are going to have a breast cancer. And remember, it doesn't detect lymphoma. It's not designed to detect lymphoma or metastatic lung cancer, for example. So low means low. Low doesn't mean zero. So you have to know how to use the tool. It's a tool. It's not perfect. It's not replacing clinical judgment. So for example, if we see a group of calcifications that look suspicious, we are still going to recall that patient on a screening mammogram, even if the AI says negative. And we definitely have found those kind of cancers. And my colleagues love to send me those cases. Look, the AI is stupid. Look, I'm better than the AI. I'm like, yes, you're supposed to be better than the AI. That's why I pay you a lot of money. I don't pay. Mount Sinai pays you a lot of money to find exactly those cases that the AI has missed. Otherwise, we could just go home and not have jobs.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, that was fantastic. I'm curious what you would say to people who are coming into the medical field in terms of suggestions related to their future and AI, and what opportunities they might avail themselves of now while they're getting their education.
So if I had to do it all over again, I would learn how to code. If I was 15, 16, 17, I would definitely learn how to be a software engineer and to code, because that intersection is great. How to create the artificial intelligence tools that we use. So one question I often get along those lines is, should I not go into radiology because artificial intelligence is just going to replace me? It's not going to replace us. It's not that good. It's really good, but we're still better. What's best is the combination of the human and the artificial intelligence. So learning how to use it, and just like you asked before, how do we learn not to have that bias where we just automatically assume the computer knows better than us? It's the combination. Sometimes the computer will get it right, sometimes we'll get it right. And by experience, we learn when to go with yourself and when to go with the computer's opinion.
I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Margulies. That was a fantastic presentation on AI and the influence in breast imaging. At this time, I'm going to take a moment to introduce two wonderful women. They're both patients of mine. I adore them both, and they're very kind to spend some time and tell us their story this morning. Their names are Kristen Lalima and Trisha Vertucci. I'm going to ask you ladies to walk on up. While they're walking up, I'm going to tell you a small sidebar story. Janine puts up I think Kristen put up its bra day. And I think both of them looked at me and said, for us, it's really no bra day. Because of a great reconstruction, we don't need a bra. And true story, that just happened a few minutes ago. So they're wonderful, wonderful women who found each other through this journey, and I'm looking forward to hearing their presentation today. Thank you both so much.
Is this working? Good morning, everyone. We're so happy to be here. I'm Kristen, that's Trisha. While Trisha sets up for her speech, I thought of something that may be a little inappropriate. I'm already starting and going off script. So, Dr. Adona, you actually hold the honor, and will probably always hold the honor, for being the only man that has seen me and Trisha's boobs. And you will likely always hold that honor, unless we have a bad weekend in Atlantic City. And then all bets are off, but they will be very impressed with your work. So I'll say that. So now, Trisha, take it away. Oh, by the way, Trisha and I are breast friends. We'll get to that later. Trisha's going to start with her story. I will tell mine. Shockingly, we only came to each other's lives maybe 4 years ago. So we'll tell both of our individual stories, and then we'll wrap it up together.
Good morning, everyone. And by the way, if I was this tall, she would stop making fun of my height. But just, I was 45 when breast cancer crashed into my life like a wrecking ball. Thank you. I had a beautiful 9-year-old daughter, a loving new husband of 2 years. I had no interest in being brave. Life was full, happy, beautifully ordinary, until it wasn't. Within 48 hours, everything had changed. During what was supposed to be a routine gynecological visit, my doctor found a lump, which led to a mammogram, which led to a biopsy. And when I got the call and heard the words, "You have breast cancer and it already spread into your lymph nodes," my world stopped, but I can't say I was surprised, as I do have a long family history. We do not have the BRCA gene, by the way. Over the next 5 years, I endured 16 rounds of chemo, 26 rounds of radiation, a double mastectomy, removal of 13 plus lymph nodes. I had MRIs, CAT scans, biopsies, hospitalizations. I had ports in, ports taken out, countless IVs. I basically had a punch card at the hospital, but every 10th visit, I did not get that free latte. I'll be honest, being graceful was not my strong suit at first. Then I made a decision. I was going to fake it until I make it. Not because I felt brave, but because I had to. I had a daughter who needed me. I had a husband who literally waited 49 years to get married. Bad timing on his part, right? And every time my mother looked at me with tears in her eyes and would whisper, "It should have been me." So that kind of love fuels you in ways you can never expect. So somewhere between, in the middle of all that chaos, I found my WTF moment. Not what you think, though yes, I said that many times. But now WTF stood for something completely different. W stood for being a warrior, T is for being thankful, and F is for being faithful. Warrior. I'm a warrior. I fought every day for my health, for my daughter, for my husband, for my parents, for my friends. Every treatment was a battle in a war I was determined to win. And I stand here today because I won. There were days I did not feel like a woman. Thank you. Thank you. You're gonna make me cry. There were days I did not feel like a woman. I had awkward expanders where my breasts used to be. I avoided mirrors like they were cursed because they were truly a reflection of what I was trying to forget. But then it hit me. I am a woman. And because I'm a woman, I had the grit, the guts, sheer stubbornness to fight like hell. And guess what? I didn't just survive. I outlasted, I outfought, and I outsassed cancer. And I won that battle too. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for every moment and every person who stood by me. My friends threw me a boob voyage party right before my double mastectomy. It's a thing, it's a real thing, I had no idea. They poured one out for the ladies. But they did remind me that there's love and light and laughter in a time which was the darkest time in my life. I'm deeply thankful for my parents and my husband. I started chemo in the middle of the pandemic. So my husband was an essential worker, so he had to go to work, so he couldn't come home to me. So my parents moved in with me to take care of me and my 9-year-old daughter, and my husband moved into their empty house in Queens. My parents were wonderful. They were like, I teased them, they were like superheroes armed with Lysol, love, and snacks. And my poor husband had to live on FaceTime with me every night. But his support and love never wavered. I'm thankful for my daughter, my sweet baby girl. She made sure my glass was always half full, whether it was with my favorite, which is a lot of ice and seltzer, wine, or just her love. I'm thankful for my doctors, Dr. Donna and Dr. Marks. Dr. Donna, you truly have been with me since day one. You walked beside me through every step of this journey. Thanks to your skill and genuine compassion, I now look in the mirror and feel whole again, but you didn't just restore my body, you restored my spirit. And a big thank you and shout out to your staff who consistently mirrors your warmth and brilliance. I'm thankful to Dr. Marks, he's my oncologist. He earned my trust from day one. His confidence gave me strength, his comfort and brilliance gave me hope. These two men came into my life as complete strangers, and through their care and compassion, they became my heroes and will forever be etched in my heart. I'm faithful. I'm faithful in my future because I know I can weather any storm. I've already faced some of the hardest days of my life and came through it stronger. I'm faithful of the progress of breast cancer research towards better treatments, earlier detection, and one day, hopefully a cure. While I know that there's a chance my daughter may face this battle too, but I'm faithful that her journey will be easier, faster, and filled with even more hope because of the work that's being done today. I leave you with this. Whatever battle you are facing, find your WTF and be a warrior and be thankful and be faithful because you're stronger than you know and you're never alone. Thank you for letting me share.
Now you're a shrimp again. Anyway, well, I'm on this. Good morning, everyone. So before we get started, I have to tell the story a little bit out of order. I made a decision after my diagnosis that I wanted to be very open, and I wanted to document everything that happens. I did this for one main reason. I wanted my boys to know, if I didn't survive, that I really fought as hard as I could. Not gonna get emotional today, I promise. As I looked through a video that I made and compiled all the pictures over the 4 years of my battle, I realized that nobody really knows what's behind the picture and why I chose the pictures. So I'm gonna take you through just some of them. I actually created a YouTube video because I knew they would always have it, and now it's something I look back on and enjoy. So, these 3 pictures will always represent how the world could change within a few weeks. The top right, bathing suit hottie on the beach, that was my 38th birthday, July 11th, 2011. I was in the best shape of my life, 2 beautiful boys, John and Luke, 10 and 7, a seemingly happy marriage, a successful career. I was actually practicing Taekwondo, competing in tournaments up and down the East Coast with my sons, and I was training for the New York City Marathon. I was never happy with my body before that day. I was never an athlete, and I was like, 38, this is my year. This is my year. I'd been to the gynecologist 2 months prior, where a breast exam was done, everything was fine, and I was told, you don't need a mammogram for 2 more years. So next year when you come back, then I'll give you a script and you could go back when you're 40. A few days after my birthday, I won't lie, I was looking in the mirror and I was kind of admiring this new body that I wound up getting at this late stage in my life. And what I was noticing is that I was the type of person that when I lost weight, my boobs got smaller. When I gained weight, my boobs got bigger. Well, at this point, my boobs were kind of small, and I kind of giggled at this newfound body, but I'm like, the boobs fit this smaller. And then I just literally put my hands on my breast, and my stomach just dropped. And the best I could describe it was it felt like a pencil tip underneath my skin. I went for a mammogram 1 week after my 38th birthday and was called back for a spot mammogram and a sonogram. As they did the spot mammogram, I noticed the technicians all around and everybody was looking. I then went for the sonogram, and the sonogram didn't even begin, and a doctor walked in. Now, I don't know about anybody here, but when you go to an imaging place, I didn't even think doctors actually were staffed inside the imaging. So when a doctor walked in and said, we're getting your films together, I believe this is cancer, it was my first oh shit moment. So if you shift to the picture in the pool, that's when, after I came home from the lab, I went in the pool with the boys. And, you know, it's interesting. There was so much behind that smile. And that was 2 weeks exactly after my 38th birthday. I went to Sloan for an appointment, consulted with the surgeon, and they said they would review the films and call me back the following week for a biopsy. I no sooner walked out of Sloan, walked out of the elevator, my cell phone rang. They said, Kristen, come to the 6th floor now. We're doing the biopsy right now. Monday, August 1st, ironically, exactly 3 weeks after my 38th birthday, I received the call, you have breast cancer. I was told that the tumor spread from my mid-chest across to all the branches and ducts and into my lymph nodes. It was HER2 positive, which is very aggressive. I needed a double mastectomy, 16 rounds of chemotherapy, 25 rounds of radiation, and an additional 52 weeks of an IV drug called Herceptin, which actually is a life-saving drug. Before that drug came into existence, HER2 was basically a death sentence. The bottom right picture with the boys was a trip I took them to Hershey. It was already planned before this storm happened, and I wanted to do it. So that picture was taken a week before my double mastectomy because I just wanted to spend some time with them, and I knew the next week the journey was going to begin. So just so everybody knows, I was very open about it all. I made that decision early. I was also a bit of a clown. The books they give you in the hospital on how to tell your kids that you have cancer, I tossed them in the garbage. I was honest, I was funny, I was open as I could be without scaring the crap out of them. I probably overachieved in everything, but I'm not proclaiming that was a good thing. I never took a leave from work. The middle picture was the day I got home from my double mastectomy. No pajamas, hair done, makeup, sneakers on. because I was so open, there was an outpouring of support. We even did a little balloon party where everybody came and wrote positive words, and we let it off into the sky, probably not realizing at that point it wasn't good for the environment. But I think, oh, I can't help it. Whenever I see that, I go, that was not good. So my famous quote during this time was from Mother Teresa. I know God will not give me anything I can't handle. I just wish he didn't trust me so much. This picture is the first picture is my first chemotherapy session. And the middle, I decided to start having some fun. So I decided to cut my hair, and I just knew that I think they said by the second chemo treatment, my hair would be gone. So I just felt this was, again, a document. Every single time I was at the hospital, I took a picture. Sorry. So you would think this picture's pretty obvious. I'm at a pumpkin patch with the boys. What's significant about this picture is this was 3 days after chemo, where I was told you're gonna hit a wall, you're not gonna be able to get out of bed, you're gonna be sick and puking in the bathroom. And I was waiting for this like Hulk metamorphosis to happen, like I was gonna change all of a sudden, everything was gonna go bad. It wasn't sunshine and lollipops. I wasn't feeling fantastic, but I made a choice to say, instead of laying in bed that day feeling sick and nauseous, I'd rather spend it on the pumpkin patch with my sons. So as I said earlier, I practiced Taekwondo. I tested for my high red belt. It was about 1.5 months after my double mastectomy. And I was into my second chemotherapy treatment. What's significant actually about this picture is after I received my high red belt, I was gonna hang it up and just not go back to Taekwondo until I was done with all my treatment. After high red is a black belt. And I went to go give my instructor a hug. I'll be back in a few months. And he's like, I'll see you tomorrow. And I went, no, I'm hanging it up. And he goes, well, that's gonna be really hard because it usually takes about 6 months to a year to train for a black belt, but the Grandmaster approved you to take your black belt test in 6 weeks, so we have a lot of work to do. And I was back there the next day, and every day thereafter, 6 days a week, through the good and the bad days. So the significance of this picture was my hair is short. It was gonna be gone in a couple of days. And you know, it's really interesting. Everybody has an interesting bucket list. My bucket list item, before I even thought cancer would be a thought, was I always wish I had the guts to cut my hair short. It was just something I always wanted to do, and I never had the guts to do it. So that's what I decided to do. But it only lasted a couple of days. This slide and the next are dedicated to the support I was basically suffocated with during this time. This was the Making Strides Walk of 2011. I had over 170 friends and family there. Team Kristen was actually the #1 personal, the fundraiser of that year. We raised over $22,000. So, side note on support, I had the earlier picture that had my parents at the top, my mother's, and then my father. And what I want to say about this is, when I was younger, my parents had a very bad divorce. They separated and divorced when I was very young. They were both remarried, not amicable at all. They didn't speak. I had to have parties with them on opposite sides of the room. I couldn't have anything in my house because they couldn't be that close together. When I woke up from my double mastectomy, I open my eyes and I see my mother, my father, my stepmother, my stepfather, all there with a smile on their face. And I went, did I die? And they just looked at me. So just a note for everybody, it's a shame that it took all those years for my parents to actually get along, and now they could sit at the dining room table with me and come over. So it's just a little lesson. The grudges aren't worth it. Life's too short. Thank you. So, guess what? I did it. 6 weeks of practicing, 6 days a week. I received my black belt. And by the way, look at that body at the end. Just another reminder, we need to stop drinking wine. Or champagne and cherries very early in the morning in Atlantic City. It's not very good. I'm giving the secrets away, sorry. These pictures represent how much I hated a wig. I want to kind of move it along a little bit. But just another note, don't be vain. If you're going through it, this is your time to own it, rock it, and don't make excuses. I did it with big earrings, hats, you know, it's your only time rather than being uncomfortable with the wig. And unfortunately, my father a lot of money went to waste with that wig. Decorating the Christmas tree with the boys. Time ended up in the hospital with a fever. Gotta tell you, I put that picture in there. Showers are so much easier when you don't have to do your hair. They were so much easier. So, more chemo in the middle picture represents my last chemo treatment, and the ends, my normal sidekicks, my boys that never left my side. I was goofy, Angry Bird hats. I don't even know, that looks like it's out of like The Godfather or something, that ends hat. I'm not even sure what that was all about. And when I was bald. But I have to be honest, I had a pretty nicely shaped head, so I actually did well with that. And here it is. This is like the money shot. The hair grew back, and I never, ever, ever put on a bandana, and I never put on a hat again after this picture. And this, I rocked a crew cut pretty well and was starting to get back to normal life. The last picture, I actually remember this like it was yesterday. I'm not sure if you could see it, but I'm all raw over here. And it was basically during radiation, and I was burnt to a crisp. And see, Dr. Adana, this is where you always complain about the radiation, what it does. This is when the boob problem started after radiation. This is likely my second favorite picture in the entire world. My first favorite picture is when I gave birth to Luke, and John came up to see him, and it was just John and I looking at Luke when he was born. But this is basically my second favorite picture in the world. And almost done, guys. So after September 11th, I was afraid to fly. I hadn't flown, and then I went through my breast cancer journey, still never flew. And then I said, I'm afraid to fly because I think I'm gonna die. I just went through breast cancer. So this is my pictures. I went to Paris, and the picture at the end is at the Guinness factory in Ireland. And that bottom picture was actually right in front of my house in Brooklyn, New York, but it didn't snow that much this year. And I said, I'm still gonna make a snow angel because you only live once, and you should make a snow angel. So the next 3 slides, I don't want to get emotional here, and this is why I saved this to the end. There were only 3 times that I cried during my battle. The first is when I realized that a double mastectomy meant I would lose my nipples. The second is when I found out I needed chemotherapy and was going to lose my hair, which was such a silly thing to cry about. And the third thing is when I asked Jesus for one thing, to let me be on this earth to see my 7 and 10-year-olds be 17 and 20. Well, John is now 25 and Luke is 21. John is a direct support professional helping disabled adults become independent in their lives. And Luke is at the last picture. Luke just graduated in 3 years with his bachelor's and is back for his one last year for his master's. So now you think the journey's over, and it was to an extent, but I still couldn't look in the mirror at my breasts. Every morning I would just get undressed and I'd go straight into the shower. And probably went through about 8 surgeries, 5 different doctors, and then I met this cutie patootie over here. So, you want to take it over again over here?
So why are we here together? It all started on a job interview. I was just finishing up with my surgeries, and I was still recovering from cancer, though I was cancer-free. A mutual friend of ours, I did not know Kristen at the time, called, said, "Are you ready to work? Get out of bed, and I have a job for you, and there's nobody more suited for this position than you." Fine, I got my resume together, submitted it, and I have this interview on Zoom because it's still sort of pandemic-esque. So I get on my Zoom video, and I'm nervous. I haven't interviewed in a while, and I'm all ready, and I see this beautiful, welcoming woman come on the screen, and I'm ready for this.
And all I see is a black screen. So I'm like, this is gonna be an awkward interview. But knowing what she was going through, I decided to lean in. And I said to her, "Trisha, I'm not sure if you realize this." I said, "But your camera's off." I said, but if that's what you're more comfortable," because I knew she was battling. I knew that she didn't have her hair at that point. I said, "If you don't want to come on camera," I go, "that's fine. I'll shut off my camera too, but I just wanted to let you know." And you answered.
No, I had no idea I wasn't on camera. I'm like, what do I do? Of course I want to be on camera. I want to face-to-face. So next thing you know, I'm on camera. We really didn't talk about the job. We both knew we were breast cancer survivors. We started talking. Next thing you know, God's honest truth, my wig's off, my shirt's up, her shirt's up.
Is there human resources in the room? If there's
literally-
human resources in the room, please disregard everything that you just heard.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it works. Really, because I had gone in for the flap, and then she had the implants. So she was telling me how uncomfortable she was with her implants. And I was like, well, look what I did. And, shirts off. It was completely inappropriate. I was kind of nervous because I really wanted the position, and somewhere in the middle of this, she's like, your resume speaks for yourself. Like, you got the position if you want it. So that worked out.
Let's get that out of the way so we can continue showing each other our boobs.
Yeah, so we move on, and I gave her Dr. Adana's information because now she wants to get rid of these implants and get the flap. So that's why we're here together, because we were both so willing to share. I mean, we definitely overshared, but like
Is there any oversharing between breast
not anymore,
friends? I
anymore.
don't think so.
No, but there is a joke. My mother was mortified when she heard about, "What, you have your shirt up?" I go, "Listen, Ma, it's not the first time I had to show my boobs to get a job." Which it was. It really was. But sometimes I like to stick it to her, and she just walks away. But anyway.
On a serious note, I think I'd mentioned at the end of my presentation, I was so unhappy with the way I looked, and I just couldn't even look in the mirror. And as much as, of course, you're grateful to be alive, right? So that's obviously the first thing. It hurt my heart every day to look in the mirror. And, we went through a lot, Dr. Adana, team, you guys know me. I feel like we became best friends over the years. But, I got to a point, and obviously I can't do it here, but like they jiggle now, like getting those implants out. And then it was, and Dr. Adana could attest, and I think Katie, Jet, you could all attest to the fact, Christine, who has to deal with me a lot too, I really wanted what I wanted, and I wanted perfection. And the great part about it is you all gave it to me. And I really wanted, I wanted the full gamut. I wanted reconstructed nipples. I wanted, boobs that bounced, and we're there. We got there. So thank you for making me feel whole, and that's the journey that was finally happened. But it wouldn't have happened without Trisha. So, and the other thing, when I went through my journey, I knew nobody with breast cancer. I knew nobody with cancer. And that's another reason why I think I decided to always just be out and open and speaking to people, because I felt it was so important, to hear others. And, there were times even at work, I would go to work with my bandana on, or I didn't really wear the wig, And I found like people would come knocking on the door. It didn't have to be breast cancer. It could have been another cancer. It could have just been some diagnosis they got. And it like opened the door where people just like knocked. And were like, can I talk to you about this? Can I talk to you about that? And I just, to me, it was always worth it. And I think that that's what we do best also.
For sure, that's why we're here. We love to share, and we love to do together, though we do it together with strangers, we do it apart. But a story that just happened last month, Kristen and I were in Atlantic City, and we were sitting.
By the way, it's her. You all know this. I never went to Atlantic City before this girl. So she made me a degenerate gambler. I was not like that before.
I'm not a gambler.
I was not.
I only play slots with you. I'm a poker player. I downgrade to play slots.
Oh.
So we share a slot machine.
She slums with me. She basically just said
I
she
do.
slums with me at the slots.
But we share a slot machine because
All right, girl.
We share a slot machine, and we have this is relevant. So we're sharing a slot machine, and we have different styles. I scream and curse at the slot machine and knock on the thing and curse it, and she talks to it nice. Oh, give me some money. And so this lady next to us, this older lady, she was an old lady. She's like, "Are you two sisters?" And because you're crazy and hysterical. And she's like, "No, we're breasties." What's that? And we explained. The woman started coming into tears, and we're like, "Why are you crying?" She's like, I have an elderly mother, and just this morning, the doctor called me and told me that she has breast cancer, and I'm battling on how to tell her. And it's just so ironic that I run into you two who are, living a full life and cracking up and making me crack up, and it's just so refreshing. And we spent 45 minutes speaking to this woman and shared information with her and told her we're there for her, and we realized that this is what we want to do. We're trying to find a platform for it, but it's just so important to share with other women. Women need to share with other women. End of story.
Yep. So thank you all for listening to us. We're here for any questions if you have any. We hope you enjoyed that, and we hope to see you soon because we want to keep doing it. And remember, share. Don't hide your story. Share it with people. You're going to help somebody. Oh, and then just one last thing I want to say. There are women that feel less than when they didn't need a ton of treatment. I've had so many women say, I don't really say anything because I only needed a lumpectomy. And the way Trisha and I feel, we talk to people, we open our mouths, we have these conversations because we want you to get, to self-detect, get it early so that you don't have to go through a double mastectomy. You don't have to get chemo, you don't have to get radiation. We do this and people should share so that we want you to get as little treatment as possible and not have your breast maimed if you don't have to. So that's why I say, please, you're a survivor. It doesn't matter how you went through it, but share and make sure that you keep on the other women, and there are obviously men that do it, you keep on them to make sure that they check themselves or get themselves checked as soon as they can. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I know I was laughing so hard. I gotta clear my throat there. Yeah, you guys are definitely podcast ready. Your show ready, totally. So I develop shows, true crime shows, but you guys may inspire me. We're gonna get in touch. We're gonna get in touch because I think that there absolutely is something there. Yeah. So as you've just heard, healing isn't only about medical treatment. It's also about emotional and psychological support, which we saw so beautifully and see so beautifully through you two. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Marianne Fregola, Chief of Wellness Services at New York Cancer and Blood Specialists, who will be speaking on the critical connection between breast cancer and psychological well-being. Please welcome Dr. Fregola.
Thank you all. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me. It's very hard to come after you guys just shared that amazing story. So thank you for uplifting everybody and sharing your support. Yes, sure. Great. Today we're going to talk about something that often gets less attention, the psychological journey. While treatment focuses on the body, we know that healing also depends on emotional well-being. That's where supportive care makes a real difference. Breast cancer is the most common cancer among women worldwide. Thanks to early detection and better treatments, survival rates have improved dramatically. But survival isn't the only story. From the moment of diagnosis, patients face fear, stress, and uncertainty that can be just as overwhelming as physical illness itself. Although I think Atlantic City might have something to do with it now. Treatment varies. Breast cancer, as we said, is the most common cancer among women worldwide, but survival isn't the only story. Advances of treatment has significantly improved survival, particularly when there's early detection. Despite progress, diagnosis and treatment often bring emotional and psychological challenges. Supportive care, where we address physical, emotional, and psychological impact, is essential for managing breast cancer and enhancing quality of life. A breast cancer diagnosis goes beyond physical illness. Many patients experience anxiety and fear, especially around treatments and options, and then, of course, the uncertainty of prognosis. Body image concerns, loss of self-esteem, and changes in relationships can be deeply challenging. Depression and fatigue are common. Cognitive difficulties, sometimes referred to as chemo brain, is a real thing and can add to the emotional burden. Recognizing these physiological effects is key to providing comprehensive care. And of course, the uncertainty of what comes next is always present. Everything is impacted when we talk about psychological impacts. Family dynamics, social roles, the normal, everything gets changed. Mental health can take on many forms. Mental health interventions help patients navigate the emotional challenges of diagnosis and treatment. It improves resilience and can enhance overall quality of life. Some interventions can include cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps manage patients' anxiety and depression, mindfulness and meditation, which can give tools to handle stress in the moment and ongoing. Psychoeducation helps patients and families understand what they're experiencing because, again, it's a whole dynamic. It's not just the patient. And sometimes medication, and that's okay. Medication is needed for more severe symptoms. These therapies don't just reduce stress, but they give patients the strength to process what's happening and move forward with resilience. In practice, I often see people, or women and men, embarrassed if they need to look at medication therapy. But I often normalize it as any other illness that we have to treat because it's just as important and it goes hand in hand. What is supportive care, and why is it important? Supportive care means caring for the whole person, not just the disease. It's an approach that addresses emotional, social, and spiritual needs just as important as the physical. It can include counseling, support groups, nutrition guidance, and ultimately survivorship programs. By providing practical and psychological support, we can help patients stay on track with their treatment, improve overall outcomes. Essentially, supportive care ensures their patients feel supported in every aspect of their journey. The goal is simple: to help patients feel supported and empowered at every stage in their journey. Supportive care is provided before, during, and after treatment. Why it's important in breast cancer? It addresses the emotional needs. It helps patients manage anxiety, depression, fear of recurrence, and overall stress. Improving quality of life, supporting patients through physical side effects like pain, fatigue, body image changes. All of these are important. If we can focus on improving quality of life, we can sometimes adhere to treatment a little more on schedule and a little better to get you through it. Also encouraging social support, connecting patients with families and friends and peers, all to reduce isolation and know that they're not alone. Enhancing treatment adherence, patients who feel supported are more likely to follow their treatment plans. And supporting survivorship, helping patients transition after treatment to manage long-term effects and focus on wellness beyond survival. No one should face breast cancer alone. Support can come from family, friends, breast friends, or peer groups where patients share experiences and advice. Now we have online communities as well and faith-based support groups that can provide comfort. What matters most is knowing that you are not alone, that others are walking in the path with you. Support networks can be anything to each other, can be family, friends, peers, and patient groups, all playing a crucial role in the patient's cancer journey. Provide emotional comfort, help reduce stress and isolation, and offer practical support with appointments, medications, daily needs, things that patients may forget. Just having that extra support to help you say that you're normal in forgetting something simple. Also can give patients a sense of belonging and hope, which will positively impact mental health and treatment outcomes. Barriers to supportive care. Unfortunately, supportive care isn't always easy to access. There is also a stigma and discomfort around discussing mental health care, and this prevents people from seeking support. Financial and insurance challenges, along with limited access to trained providers, can create significant obstacles. Additionally, cultural differences or beliefs and communication barriers can affect whether patients feel comfortable engaging in supportive care. Recognizing these barriers help us work towards more accessible and patient-centered care. Survivorship and long-term well-being. Survivorship is up and coming. I know everybody's heard of it now, but it didn't exist a long time ago. And it's really more than just finishing cancer treatment. It's about learning to live well after cancer. Many survivors face lingering physical effects, whether it be fatigue, lymphedema, cognitive changes, or just body image disorder, along with emotional challenges like fear of recurrence or depression. I don't think it ever really leaves you. Long-term well-being requires continued support through healthy lifestyle practices, mental health resources, and structured follow-up care. By focusing on the whole person, we can help survivors not only recover, but also redefine quality of life and find meaning in their new normal. The goal isn't surviving cancer, it's living after cancer. And there are survivorship programs available to you. When oncologists, nurses, psychologists, social workers all work together, patients feel cared for as a whole person. The role of healthcare providers is essential. It's not just cases. People feel cared for as a whole person. As providers, we play a key role in supporting the psychological well-being of breast cancer patients. We should be screening for distress just as much as we screen for vital signs. We need to normalize conversations about mental health and make the appropriate referrals when needed. This begins with actively screening for distress, anxiety, and depression, and giving information to patients to help understand and manage their illness. We can connect patients with counseling, support groups, and other mind-body interventions while fostering open communication and shared decision-making. By addressing the emotional, social, and spiritual needs in addition to the medical care, we ensure a truly patient-centered approach that enhances quality of life through treatment and beyond. We just have to bring it up. It has to be more acceptable and more normalized. Once you start talking about it, you'll be very surprised in how many people feel the same thing. New York Cancer and Blood has a palliative and supportive program. I always hesitate to bring up the word palliative, but I need people to understand that it's a supportive element of care, and it is essential. Palliative and supportive care providers work alongside the oncologists and the medical team to address the whole person. The focus goes beyond treating the disease. Instead, we help manage symptoms, reduce emotional stress, and ensure patients and families feel supported throughout their cancer journey and going forward. Symptom management is an essential part of the palliative program, and I really emphasize that when people come to see me as a palliative provider. We try to guide patients in making decisions, no matter what they may be, but also add to that extra layer of support besides the oncologist that you're dealing with. Palliative and supportive care makes people live better. I'd like people to read that again. Again, I can talk about palliative and supportive care for hours. But living cancer is not about treating the illness. You can live better with a cancer diagnosis. It's about helping the person define what better means to them. By addressing symptoms and supporting daily life, we honor that person, not just the diagnosis. When we talk about living better with cancer, it is important to remember that this means different things for different people. For one patient, living better may be not having nausea or not having pain. I can't tell you how many times patients have said to me, I don't want the treatment because I don't want to be nauseous. But on the outside, it looks like they're being defiant. They don't want treatment, but it's really fear and what they're so scared of. So by talking to patients and normalizing that I can get you through this, let's get past it, you enhance that compliance. Other people, it's just maintaining normalcy in their daily routines, being there with their children at their games or their plays or their school events, not letting cancer interfere with their life. Our role as healthcare providers is to prioritize symptom management and overall quality of life, whether a patient's treatment is aimed at cure or managing progressive disease. Ultimately, we must never lose sight of the fact that we are treating a whole person, not just a disease. Key takeaways. Let me leave you with 3 key points. First, breast cancer affects both mind and body. We cannot separate the two. Second, supportive care isn't optional, it's essential. And finally, when we address the emotional needs of patients, we don't just help them cope, we help them heal. Now, I talk very fast, so I caught up on time for you guys. But I thank you for listening and for caring about this important aspect of care. Every patient deserves to be treated as a whole person with dignity, compassion, and hope. And I'd love to answer any questions.
I thought it was interesting you said palliative. Why do people struggle with that, and how do you overcome that?
Thank you for asking that. So historically, I should say, palliative care was always looked at as more hospice care, you know? So it goes intertwined with, what is my doctor not telling me? Why am I seeing this palliative person? And then I come in and say, hey, I'm the girl that talks too fast. You may not need me now, but you'll always remember me. But it's really focusing on symptom management. We palliate everything. If you have a cold, we palliate symptoms. If you have Crohn's disease, we palliate symptoms. It can be temporary, short-term, or ongoing, but it's an extra layer of support for patients. And again, when you get to know somebody in their journey, you know what they want. If, God forbid, they do progress, you do have knowledge of what they want for their goals of care in the future. But being brought on earlier reduces fear, enhances relationships, and really just gets them through their treatment much better. So thank you for asking that. Thank you.
I had some for the earlier panel as well. The AI was fascinating, but I know we have to keep the program going. Breast reconstruction, as many will tell you, goes beyond restoring physical appearance. It often plays a powerful role in emotional recovery and the sense of being whole again. To explore this more deeply, I'd like to invite Dr. Thomas Davenport, partner at New York Plastic Surgical Group, to moderate a panel discussion. He will be joined by his colleagues, Dr. Jerry Chang, Dr. Noel Natoli, and Dr. Harithra Veramachineni. All are board-certified plastic surgeons who specialize in breast reconstruction after cancer. Please welcome our clinical panel.
Yep, please. Good morning, everyone. I've been told that everyone needs to speak twice as fast for us to get back on time. So we'll do this. So good morning, and thank you, everyone, for coming. It's my pleasure to be moderating the breast panel again. I had a couple years off, but they told me that my 22-page essay on why I would like to moderate this great panel won the prize. Of course, I later found out that they narrowed it down between me and nobody. And they even said that was close. So they gave me a very strict script that I'm supposed to read. And they said, if you're not good, we're going to replace you with an AI Taylor Swift for next year. So it says, Tom, please just read the questions, no jokes, no tangents. Make sure you review everything carefully and practice, which I was unable to do because of a medical emergency last night called New Episode of Below Deck. It says, please introduce your colleagues, Jerry Chang, Haritha Veramachineni, and Noel Natoli. Wait for applause. It says, please do not mispronounce Haritha's last name. Please do not mention that Jerry has the best hair in the practice like you did last year. So first, I'd like to introduce Jerry Chang, a medical degree from Washington University, general surgery and plastic surgery at Yale University, chief of plastic surgery at New York Hospital, Columbia Presbyterian. My fun fact for Jerry is that he's a musician. He plays the guitar and he sings. Obviously, he must have taken AP classes in kindergarten as well. And you may have heard of his band if they play locally. The name is U2. Dr. Natoli, Doctor of Medicine at Medical University at Syracuse, completed a combined residency in plastic and reconstructive surgery at Penn State. Then she went on to University of Pennsylvania, where she did a microsurgery and breast reconstruction fellowship. My fun fact for Noelle is that she ran the New York Marathon 2 years ago. Congratulations, excellent work. And my fun fact is I watched the New York Marathon from my couch without any breaks and only 2 injuries. So that's my fun fact. And then we have Dr. Vera. She completed her medical school at Vanderbilt University. She then completed her plastic surgery at University of Southern California. Then she did a microsurgery fellowship at the Kleinert Institute. She specialized in breast reconstruction and aesthetic surgery. And her fun fact is she is president of the New York Society of Plastic Surgeons, where she works for advocacy for health access and access to breast reconstruction. So, and that explains all the Secret Service here today. So we're going to start off with our question period. Please save your questions for the end. As usual, the best question will get a prize, which is free admission to next year's program. So we'll start with fat grafting. Fat grafting is really a new and exciting part of breast reconstruction that didn't even exist 20 years ago. It's really exciting, and then there are so many different avenues. And I'll start with a question for Dr. Natoli, which is, what is fat grafting, and what is it used for in breast reconstruction?
Thank you, Tom, for the intro. So fat grafting is a technique we've been using for, about a decade now, at least in my practice. And what it does is replaces either the need for an implant or supplements that. So we can use a patient's own tissue to recreate the breast when we do our deeps, but we can also build a breast via fat grafting. To do it, it takes a couple of steps. It's not often achieved with a single procedure, and so patients need to know that. It's done via mainly liposuction, so we can, enhance other portions of the body by taking unwanted fat from other areas to build the breast. But very often, because this does require often staging with multiple procedures, I would say on average 3 to 4 procedures for a complete reconstruction, then we're really trying to be judicious about taking those areas and using one area at a time, maybe at the time of a mastectomy, to first graft into the muscle and build a small breast mound, and then coming back, at later dates. It's definitely a procedure you need to have patience for, and then it also supplements the reconstructions we do. When patients have rippling after breast reconstruction, we are often in the second stage, even at the time of tissue expander to implant reconstruction. We're putting fat in the breast. It is a fairly safe procedure. We have lots of meta-analysis to show now that it may lead to a little more tissue sampling, maybe biopsies, but that it doesn't cause cancer to move this tissue around. So it can be used in conjunction with the other procedures we have, whether it be implants or even autologous to make the breast mound more shapely, or can be used on its own.
So, thank you. Just a follow-up question. So is this the same fat liposuction that's done for body contouring? And is it the same, and how is it different? And does it really affect the body in the same way? And finally, let's say there's an older male doctor in the practice who wants to get free liposuction, donate their fat to one of the patients, asking for a friend. Is that possible?
So just for that friend, I would say, and we get this a lot, right? You get a lot of curious ears, and obviously our breast cancer patients, we tell them to bring another set of ears with them. And the number of volunteer donors we've had in the office, I'm sure, and we appreciate that. You would have to be matched for that, so an identical twin. However, there's, newer products that are on the market that are not approved yet for breast reconstruction, but one of them, and I'm sure the vendor is here today with Tiger Aesthetics, called Alaclay, and it's an off-the-shelf basically mature adipocytes and extracellular matrix, which is what surrounds the fat. And it's literally hand-picked, and it's the best fat that you can create, and it's in a syringe, and it's stored on the shelf. So this is approved now for aesthetics, in breast augmentation, hand rejuvenation, facial rejuvenation, hip dips, and other things like that. But I think one day this will be something we're using in the breast too, which is good with, patients with skinny girl problems, right? What do we do when I don't want my implants anymore and I don't have any other choices because I don't have adequate donor sites? And we have these conversations with patients regularly. In terms of, I kind of skipped over your first question because I went straight to the volunteers for donors, but in terms of, is this like body contouring? Yes, I mean, we are doing liposuction from one area, processing the fat, and we process it. There's a couple of systems for this, Revolve being one, PureGraph, Viality. There's a host of others, and sometimes we just spin it through a centrifuge, and sometimes we're using just strainers, which is all these devices are used to improve the quality of the fat so that we have to do it less, and so we get more take. Initially, fat grafting was said to be like almost 50-50 and up to 65% take, meaning half of the fat's going to be lost. Now with what AlloClay is saying, this shelf-stable product, they're quoting about 80% take of fat. So that's pretty impressive how much you are able to keep. And the idea is just that we continue to improve upon that. So yes, it has to come from somewhere. Maybe it comes off the shelf at some point. But at this point, because there's only a limit to how much you can put in at once, because it depends on the normal tissue there that's going to keep the fat and keep the fat healthy and viable, that limits how much we can put in at a time.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to ask that we hold the questions until the end for fat grafting, because I'm sure it's a really interesting topic for everyone. I'm just going to have Dr. Vieira just talk about all of the options we have for timing breast reconstruction now. This is one area of breast reconstruction that's really come a long way in the past 10 or 15 years. So I'm just, in terms of background, when there's a diagnosis of breast cancer and the patient requires a mastectomy reconstruction, can you just describe the usual timeline and maybe some variable timelines for breast reconstruction?
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for being here today. When a woman first receives the diagnosis of breast cancer, as our patient survivors mentioned, it's absolutely devastating. And the timeline is very variable because it depends on what other treatments they may need. Often they're first referred to a breast cancer surgeon who leads the discussion and leads the timeline. We love discussing all the patients in a multidisciplinary tumor board with input from radiation oncology, radiologists, oncologists to decide the best timeline. This timeline is then very soon. It could be as soon as a few weeks after diagnosis that surgery is indicated, or it could be months from the time of diagnosis if other treatments are indicated. And I think the biggest factor also is just the patient's readiness to have surgery. And this is where it gets funny. We have patients who barely have breast cancer in very early stages wanting to have surgery yesterday, even though they can be safely postponed months from the date of diagnosis. We have other patients who really need urgent surgery in order to optimize their timeline, and we're trying to get them on the schedule, and they say, "But doctor, I have a Disney cruise in 2 months. Can I do this surgery after I get back?" And we really have to provide reassurance in one case and encouragement in the other to optimize that timeline. But we always provide the soonest possible surgical date to just treat the patient to the standard of care and optimize their long-term survival.
So what are the factors specifically that would affect the timeline? So if a patient is having chemotherapy or radiation or having issues with their overall health, can you delay the reconstruction and still get an excellent result?
Absolutely. First, patient safety is of utmost concern. Some patients have medical factors which need to be optimized in order to get them safely through the surgery, which can be anywhere from 2 hours long to several hours long, depending on their reconstruction. because of the type of cancer and the size of the cancer is so variable, sometimes chemotherapy will be required initially. That's often called neoadjuvant chemotherapy. And the type of chemotherapy can be a few weeks or a few cycles or several months long. Often the immune system needs some time to recover after chemotherapy, and typically it's 4 to 5 weeks after chemotherapy finishes that surgery should then be performed. Rarely radiation is also performed initially, but usually that's a treatment that is after the surgical removal of the cancer. So all of these factors impact that timeline of surgery.
Now, another question is something we're seeing more and more of, and breast reconstruction has really come a long way, even in the past 5 years. Patients who have already had reconstruction, can they have surgery even 5, 10 years out using all the different techniques that we have to improve the result? And does the result change over time that patients could really benefit from a revision or some ways to improve it?
Absolutely. And one of the things we love in our practice is seeing patients for consultation. It can never hurt to consult with your plastic surgeon or oncologist or breast cancer team. We love seeing patients from out of state, out of town, 20 years, 30 years after their initial diagnosis and treatment, because the therapies and surgical options we have come a long way. We have fat grafting, we have improved modes of autologous tissue that we can use to reconstruct the patient. Some patients don't even know that they can get a symmetrizing procedure covered through their insurance, which is when they had breast cancer on one breast and they never did anything to the other breast to make it match, and they're kind of walking around in prosthetic bras, but we can surgically make their life so much easier by doing surgeries later. And to answer your question, yes, thanks to the Women's Healthcare and Reconstruction Act, your insurance will cover your breast cancer surgery 10, 20, 30 years after your diagnosis.
Great. Okay, thank you. Dr. Chang, last but not least, says here, wait for wild applause. I put that one in myself. So with implant-based reconstruction, one of the standard reconstructions for many, many, many years was putting the implant under the muscle. And now we have so many different options, and we've really improved our different techniques. I just want to ask you, can you explain patients who are getting a very, very common procedure, which is the plane change, and why is it important?
Great question, Tom. You are an amazing moderator.
Wild applause, wild applause.
Wild applause. I will say you have the best beard in our group, so that's what I'd aspire to be, but I'm Asian, so doesn't grow out that well. But plane change for breast reconstruction, as you alluded to, in the past, when we trained, and maybe even up to 10 years ago, implants were put under the muscle. That was the standard. And the graphic shows there. The first graphic shows, actually the second graphic shows where the implant used to be under the pectoralis major muscle. Over the years, we've seen patients come in with certain complaints. One is pain and discomfort. The second is what's called animation deformity, or when the pectoralis major muscle is activated, when you're lifting or stretching whatnot, the muscle pushes down and deforms an implant and deforms the reconstructed breast. So these two main complaints we can address with what's called a plane change, in which surgically we put the muscle back down against the chest where it belongs, and then put the implant above the muscle. And then we cover the implant with a acellular dermal matrix. And it really improves both of those complaints of patients.
Does doing this plane change feel different for the patient?
It's become one of my favorite procedures. My PA Gabby knows. Our patients are so happy if they have these complaints. Not all patients with under the muscle have these complaints, but if they have those two complaints, which I mentioned before, They are so happy because now they're comfortable. Their muscle is no longer stretched and over an implant. It's back to where it belongs. And then number two, they don't see that animation deformity or the twitching and the deformity of the reconstructed breast. And it's one of my favorite procedures because it's been so helpful for those patients who've had those complaints.
And I have to just ask this question: are these late? And this is kind of to the whole panel. Are these late revisions and reconstructive surgeries still covered by insurance, or is it cosmetic, or what's that? How is this done?
Great question. We have no problems as of now getting these covered because it is still associated with a diagnosis of personal history of breast cancer, and it's really a revision of a reconstructed breast.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, gang. So we have some basis information here, and we would love to hear questions. Remember, the best question, I'm upping the game here, the best question gets a 2025 Mustang convertible for the best question. Tommaso, is it okay for me to offer that? Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, so let's hear best question. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Sheila, and I'm with the Women's Center of St. Francis Hospital. My question is about the fat reconstruction. If a patient gains or loses weight, how does that affect the fat in the breast? And also, if the fat is in the breast and they gain weight, will they gain more fat in the breast because the fat tissue will grow? And obviously, if they lose weight, will the fat, shrink?
Good question. So I'll share with you anecdotally. The answer is yes, resounding yes. I had a patient come in last week, and we're actually going to book her for another surgery because she had fat grafting in the past on top of an implant-based reconstruction. And she's postmenopausal, has gained some weight. One of her breasts was radiated, and unfortunately, she just almost gained nothing on that side, which is not untypical because radiation can be very unforgiving. And then the side that was the prophylactic mastectomy, maybe a little thicker, the mastectomy flaps, and we had grafted on top of that as well. Significant amount more breast tissue on that side. So yes, the fat that we're putting in is kind of low-hanging fruit in general. So the most common place I'll take fat from is the lower abdomen. Even in patients who've had a tummy tuck before or a deep procedure, sometimes the hip areas can be popular. I'm happy to, do other donor sites, but the thighs can be a little more unforgiving, especially the medial thighs, and if it's a longer procedure, the patient's exposed, it gets cold on the table. And then when you talk about other areas of fat from the back, because sometimes you have to do that, it's just a position change and the patient's asleep under anesthesia longer, so you have to consider that. But the fat will, hypertrophy, meaning enlarge with weight gain, and if this is a premenopausal woman, then you have to kind of explain that to them as well. And then also, conversely, if you lose fat, you'll lose fat in the breast. So some patients are, before liposuction procedures, they'll go out and binge a little bit, or I tried to gain weight for this surgery. And I tell patients, unless that's your new happy number, I wouldn't do that because it's not going to be, that's going to be the most sensitive fat, the breast fat we've created to those weight changes.
Great. Okay. Yes.
Shani Aldane from Live On, New York. My question is two-part. How common is tissue donation for women who do breast reconstruction? And is that available to all women if they just choose that, or does it have to be necessity?
Okay, jump ball, whoever wants to talk. I guess it's just the allo clay or the Renuva options.
So right now, that product and those products that are approved for that are, harvested from cadavers. They're not actively using. I'm sure at some point they'll, kind of widen to aesthetic centers, liposuction centers, et cetera. But at this point, it's not something that we're harvesting from other donors because the tissue has to be, basically those products, the DNA is removed from it, so patients can't react to it. So that has to be factored in terms of sharing.
The next question? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, just clarifying. So not necessarily the fat, because I know that you said is on the shelf, but more specifically the tissue, the skin. Is that, do you use tissue donation for breast reconstruction? Is it common?
The ADM?
Yes, are you referring to commonly called acellular dermal matrix, the skin?
Yes, the skin.
The dermal skin, yes, that's very common in breast reconstruction, yes.
Okay. From tissue donors?
Correct.
Oh, awesome.
We have another question over here. Dr. Davenport.
Okay, yes. Okay. Next question.
I have a revision question. If your implants are under the muscle, because with the first surgery you were told your skin was too thin for it on the outside, can you still get it revised to go over the muscle, and what would you do to support the implant?
That's a great question. I would say go to your reconstructive surgeon for evaluation. Even if it's all dependent on the pliability and the health of your skin or your mastectomy flaps. When we put it above the muscle, the implant, we still support it with the acellular dermal matrix, that skin donor skin, to help support and wrap in as almost like internal bra over the implant above the muscle. And then finally, as Noelle alluded to, or we've been talking about, the next step possibly also is that further fat grafting to further help provide extra soft tissue coverage over the implant. And so it's still very possible.
Do your patients that do that change, you still can go without a bra?
Sorry, can go without a bra?
Without a bra.
I think so.
The same look.
Yeah, and I do think on a majority that over the muscle provides a more natural appearance and a better feel because it's sitting a little bit more naturally in the breast envelope or the mastectomy envelope. My patients really do, they really like the surgery, I would say.
I just want to point out that Dr. Chang has a no bra guarantee with all of his breast reconstructions that he performs. So.
Thank you.
Overstating, but.
We have one more question over here.
Marketing's all over it.
Just to add on to that, I want to thank all of our sponsors, especially our implant representatives that are here. The technology on breast implants has come such a long way that when we do these what's called plane changes, putting the implant from under the muscle to over the muscle, nowadays we have implants which are more cohesive or stable, and so they're less like a waterbed, the waterbed of the 80s. We used to have implants like that. You would touch the implant and they would ripple and jiggle, and nowadays implants are much more what we call form stable and look much better under the skin. The technology in acellular dermal matrix has improved, so we can add that as a layer on top of the implant under your skin to make it look better. And then we also use fat grafting. If you have a very thin skin envelope, we can add fat on top of the implant to make it more natural, so we don't always have to use the muscle. And then just to piggyback on what you said about the fat, I'm actually seeing the opposite, where if a woman has one breast made of their own natural fat and one breast of the implant, with all the weight loss drugs out there now, I'm having a lot of patients come back because of weight loss. They're on Ozempic or Mounjaro, and their reconstruction was symmetric maybe 2 years ago, and now because they've lost a lot of their own natural tissue and weight in their breast, so whatever fat we transferred or reconstruction we did made of their autologous tissue is now smaller than their implant. So we often have to perform revisions to accommodate for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have time for one more question. Yes.
I had a tram flap done many, many years ago and loaded with what the doctor called fat necrosis. And because it was so long ago, I think I'm in need of a revision. When you do a revision, is that able to all be removed? It's like lumps and bumps all over my chest. And they're painful.
Just to clarify, you said it was a lat flap you had done?
Tram flap.
Okay. Jump ball to anyone who would like to address it. Okay.
So in terms of, I just didn't want to hug the microphone in my hand, but so yes, there are things that can be done. Fat necrosis is definitely a part of what we do with autologous reconstruction. A tram flap is more prone to fat necrosis, so you see us up here, we're talking more about deeps and perforator flaps and things that are preserving the blood supply to the skin and fat more than the muscle, basically, pedicles that we used to use. They're also more debilitating. We can target those areas of fat necrosis and remove them, and sometimes it has to do with the blood supply. Sometimes even in a deep flap, you can get fat necrosis in portions of the flap that aren't as well perfused, meaning the blood supply isn't as good, and you get hardening of it. Thankfully, our imaging gurus are so good that we can tell the difference. This is not mistaken for breast cancer, so it shouldn't be an alarm bell to patients, even though proper imaging is always important. There are things that we can do to target, maybe remove a portion of the flap. If it's a large portion, we may have to talk about additional tissue to augment that area, or maybe that, talking about fat grafting to that area and local tissue rearrangement. If your reconstruction was a long time ago, maybe we could do something oncoplastic, like a lift to, take care of where that defect was. So there are definitely options, and I think like a strong theme of this whole panel and just discussion today, and as Aretha had mentioned, is the lumpectomy patient shouldn't be the forgotten patient. The patient who's cancer-free but hates their breast for the last 20 years shouldn't be forgotten. These are things that we deal with every time, and yes, everyone's grateful that there's still a survivor, but that doesn't mean you have to not, take the next step with your reconstruction. And yes, usually from us, we're surgeons, we like to operate. It's another surgery, but there are things that certainly can be done. So please explore.
Thank you.
Great. So thank you again to our panel and our physicians. And thank you very much to our sponsors and the organizations who are really supporting this event. And thank you all for making the time to really, really come and be part of this event.
We're going to continue with the program. Often during treatment, you'll meet not only your physician, but also the broader care team who play vital roles in your journey. Our next speaker, Bobby Matthews, is a board-certified physician assistant who has worked alongside Dr. Matthew Kilgo at New York Plastic Surgical Group for nearly 2 decades. Today, he'll share his perspective on caring for patients throughout the breast reconstruction journey. Please welcome Bobby Matthews. Wow. People are awake now.
Thank you, Kristen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bobby Matthews. It's an honor and privilege to speak about my life as a physician assistant at New York Plastic Surgical Group. I've been a PA for over 20 years, and I have been lucky enough to work with Dr. Matthew Kilgo for the last 17 years. According to social media, you may think our job is glamorous, dressed in our tailored scrubs, in a well-lit OR, with the popular trending TikTok song playing in the background, while we're performing the most recent surgeries made famous by the hottest celebrities. But in reality, my day usually starts with the most important question: what are we ordering for lunch? My passion for the field started when I became a volunteer firefighter and an EMT. While working EMS, I also managed to graduate from PA school at Stony Brook University. I started my career in emergency medicine at Long Island Jewish Medical Center and Winthrop University Hospital. There I met the esteemed and talented doctors and PA from Long Island Plastic Surgical Group. In 2008, I was hired at LIPS, now called NIPS. This is Dr. Matthew Kilgo, who I have the pleasure to work beside. And yes, he's just as handsome and fit in real life as he is in person. So this is my typical morning routine. The slide's a little small, but if you could see it, I'm going to play a little sound here. I don't know if you can see that. It says, stop being lazy and work out. I may or may not hit the snooze button a few times and argue with myself in my head about getting out of bed. And why is working out important? Some of our surgeries can last from 1 to 8 hours. We are lifting, pushing, pulling, retracting, suturing for all extended amounts of time. This can be challenging in our bodies, which means we need good core strength, endurance, and steady hands. It's like being an athlete. And now to the most important question, the classic 6:45 a.m. discussion. So he asked, what should we order for lunch? Chipotle? No way. Taco Bell? Nope. Popeyes? Definitely not. Then we order a healthier option, which Dr. Kilgo makes sure is part of his macro-friendly diet. But on rare occasion, it only takes COVID for Dr. Kilgo to agree to get Taco Bell. Since we have lunch figured out, the next important question of the day is the music playlist for our upcoming OR cases. Yacht rock versus classic rock. These are all true, by the way. The two favorite choices on his Pandora playlist. It's not my taste in music, but as we all know, happy surgeon equals a good outcome. Our practice started off with 1 PA in 2004 and has grown to approximately 20 board-certified physician assistants. I'm currently a surgical and aesthetic PA, as well as a preceptor for multiple PA programs. We also assist in training our plastic surgery residents, so it's important for us to stay updated in new surgical techniques and keep on learning and growing. We cover many institutions, but I spend 3 days a week operating in our office OR suites and NYU Long Island. 2 days a week, I'm seeing patients for their postoperative care and yearly visits. I see all postoperative patients for drain removal, suture removal, expansions, and yearly follow-up visits. We work with people who are oftentimes dealing with difficult and challenging medical diagnoses. With this being said, emotional support and communication is an extremely part of their journey. I discuss with them at every visit what their next steps will be, providing them with all their options, implants versus autologous tissue such as the deep flap, fat grafting, scar care, and all while trying to keep their spirits high. What is a tissue expander? It's a temporary implant that stretches your chest skin to make room for an implant or your own tissue, such as a deep flap or an implant. Here's a few examples. I know we have some vendors here, so I like to support everyone. And this is how it works. Here's a little video. I'm going to have you show it off after. Okay. So we use a little magnet here to find the port. You can place it above or below the muscle. We inject normal saline solution into it to fill the breast pocket.
There's no sound, so.
Okay. I was like, oh my God. I can't say ouch.
You can say ouch. I can have the bloopers and stuff. It'll be funny. 1, 2, 3, pinch. Sorry. Okay. Don't make me look bad. What are you doing?
This process could take 2 to 6 months, depending on their treatment plan. Most women want to know, is this painful? And my response is, it is uncomfortable in the beginning, but based on the level of pain tolerance, this fills can be tailored to individual comfort levels. What do I do in the OR? I meet the patients and family before their surgery and obtain consent for their procedure. I review the procedure and their postoperative care. After this, I speak to the OR staff, which includes the nurses, the surgical tech, and the anesthesiologist to ensure a smooth procedure. I confirm the implants and equipment are available prior to the start of the surgery. Next are some tools of the trade that we use. The first picture here is Exparel. It's a long-acting numbing medication. In our experience, there's a 70% reduction of pain in the first 72 hours of a surgical procedure. Many patients take less oral narcotics, ultimately improving the postoperative course. Next is a cookie cutter we use for oncoplastic lumpectomies or breast reductions. The next is a picture of me holding fat. This is what we use for fat grafting to improve the contour after mastectomies and sometimes lumpectomies. Lastly, these are retractors that we use so the surgeon has a clear view of their operative site. The patient journey. Sometimes the patients are overwhelmed at the time of diagnosis because they are getting a lot of information from their breast surgeon, oncologist, genetic counselor, so it's important for me to review their breast reconstruction process. I like to tell our patients that this is part of a tough and difficult journey, but our goal is to give them the best possible outcome. In this line of work, it's important for us to help our patients stay positive. Patients oftentimes are emotionally exhausted in dealing with pain. A simple smile goes a long way. This is where I get to practice my comedic skills. Roman great cleavage wasn't built in a day. Our work may be plastic, but our work is fantastic. And now we can discuss my least favorite part of the job, which has become arguably the most important part of any successful plastic surgical group, social media. You have the sound back on, sorry.
What do I do?
Why does this all matter? A simple thank you note from a patient goes a long way. We try to be empathetic and sympathetic during your journey, and these gestures make us feel appreciated. I love my job as a PA. I get to spend more time with the patients and their families so the surgeons can focus on new consultations and operations. Here's another little video here. We also love food. We never turn down food. And who doesn't love cake? I don't know if you can see this picture here. Under each breast, my name is under one breast, and Dr. Kilgo's name is under the other breast there, so it was a very thoughtful cake. Showing compassion and letting them know that they're not alone in this journey, it's always scary to be the patient. As healthcare providers, we need to be able to build trust, nurture long-term relationships. Who supports me? My amazing wife, my two wonderful boys, our nurses Debbie, Cynthia, Donna, Angel, Mia, our scribe, and behind the scenes, our administrative assistant, Ashley. A special thanks to Dr. Thomas Davenport, Steve Stavries, and Dr. Kilgo, who hired me in 2008. I'm still here, thank you. Who also supports me, our fellow PAs. I don't have everyone featured here, but I try to grab everyone's picture. Thanks, Janine, for helping me. Being a PA is more than surgery. It's guiding, educating, and supporting. And yes, I do start every day speaking about lunch. This is a little plug from me here. So.
I love you all. You're beautiful. And never forget that everyone is a princess.
Thank you to the New York Plastic Surgical Group for asking me to speak. I'm truly honored to be here. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. How important laughter is and smiling during these times. Thank you. They're lucky to have you there. Next, we'll turn to a topic that is so important for young women facing a breast cancer diagnosis: fertility preservation. Our speaker is Dr. Linda Sung, Associate Professor at NYU Long Island School of Medicine and Division Director of Reproductive Endocrinology and Infertility at NYU Grossman Long Island Hospital. Dr. Sung has been a strong advocate for fertility preservation legislation in New York State. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sung. Okay.
So today I'm going to talk really briefly about current statistics in breast cancer and go over hereditary breast cancer genes. Then I'm going to talk about fertility preservation options, the risks for doing this, and frequently asked questions that I get, and then ending with the insurance coverage. So the National Cancer Institute published that in 2025, the estimated new cancers for breast is 316,000. And this comprises about 15.5% of all new cancers that we are finding in this year. And that the 5-year survival rate, at least from 2015 to 2021, is 91.7%. So there is an amazing survivalship with breast cancer, and thanks to, we all know it takes a village to make all of this happen. But when you look at New York State, red is high prevalence, orange is second high prevalence. We see a very high prevalence of breast cancer here in the state of New York. So it hits close to our home and our families. I'm sure that everybody here knows somebody who has breast cancer or at least a hereditary cancer mutation. When you are diagnosed with breast cancer, one of the things that will come up is testing for the breast cancer gene mutation. And up to 70% of women that have BRCA1 and or 2 will develop breast cancer in their lifetime. This is astronomically high and very important to understand and therefore do things about it. The most common breast cancer gene mutations are BRCA1 and BRCA2. And for BRCA1, there's a 50 to 72% chance of getting breast cancer, and for BRCA2, there's a 45 to 69%. The incidence of getting breast cancer in the opposite breast is also high, 20 to 30% by 10 years, and 40 to 50% by 20 years. Ovarian cancer is also very high, approximately 40% in BRCA1, and about 10 to 17% for BRCA2. Unfortunately, with breast cancer, it is commonly diagnosed at stage 3 to 4 when you finally find it, and it does change prognosis when it is discovered that late. Males are not excluded from breast cancers. It's higher than the general population, and BRCA2 holds a 6 to 8% chance, and there are other cancers associated with these common mutations. But those aren't the only two mutations. So I've listed out a whole bunch here in the middle of other breast cancer gene mutations, and there are also what we call variants of undetermined significance, VUS, which means that right now we don't know if they actually can cause breast cancer or not. So there's ongoing data on this, and new genes will be detected as the years progress. Once somebody has a breast cancer gene mutation, it is also recommended that their family members get tested, because 50% of family members will actually inherit this breast cancer gene mutation. It has an autosomal dominant inheritance. Things we can do, well, there is recommendations for oral contraceptive pills, which can reduce the risk of ovarian cancer. So if you've taken at least 6 months worth of birth control pills, you'll find that you have a 30 to 50% lower chance of developing ovarian cancer than in women who've never used it before. This applies to the general population, but it especially applies to women that have the BRCA1 and BRCA gene mutation. Other recommendations are what they call risk-reducing surgeries, RRS. So it's doing prophylactic, which means preventative mastectomies, and by doing that, you reduce the risk of breast cancer by at least 95%, especially with the BRCA1 and BRCA2, or if you have a strong family history of breast cancer. There's also what we call prophylactic bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, and that is removing both fallopian tubes and ovaries as a precaution to prevent ovarian cancer. And they have found that there's been an over 50% risk reduction for developing ovarian cancer if you do this prophylactic bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy procedure. But if you do that, you no longer have hormones, you go through an instant menopause, and you no longer can use your eggs to have children. So that's where fertility preservation comes in, and it is a great thing to learn about and consider as an option if you are at risk for breast cancer, if you have these hereditary cancer genes, and or if you have the actual diagnosis of breast cancer. There are different fertility preservation options: freezing eggs, freezing embryos, which are eggs fertilized by sperm, freezing sperm, and there is freezing ovarian tissue, but that is considered experimental because the pregnancy rates are not as high as it would be to freeze eggs. So fertility options for those who actually carry the hereditary cancer mutation but do not have cancer are to wait until you've completed your family building and then consider doing those risk-reducing surgeries. This is going to be a joint decision you make with your medical team. Or you can do the risk-reducing surgeries, and especially for removing ovaries, then consider doing donated eggs, which aren't your eggs, later on. Or if you're a man, you can freeze sperm, and you can freeze multiple times to have this for potential later childbearing. Or you can do fertility preservation, which is freezing the eggs and or embryos. If you're not ready to have children yet, and you can wait to do those risk-reducing surgeries, you can do fertility preservation before you do the risk-reducing surgeries for these bilateral subpingo oophorectomy procedures. Fertility options for those who have the breast cancer is to proceed with your treatments, and then you can assess your fertility options after the fact. And then you would consult somebody like me, which is a reproductive endocrinology and infertility specialist, REI physician. You can do fertility preservations prior to treatment, and this would be in consultation with your oncology team. You can opt to not have children, you can adopt, or you can do what we call third-party reproduction, donated eggs or donor sperm. That being said, when considering having children, it is important to also bear in mind that freezing eggs and or embryos at an earlier age has considerations. So we have to make sure when we do this, can you defer your fertility treatments for at least 2 weeks before proceeding ahead, because that's the time it takes to freeze the eggs and or embryos. If you don't have breast cancer, but you have the mutation, and you want to have the option of having children, this is something that you can do now. And it does allow you the choice of when you are trying to get pregnant. So whenever you're in remission, whenever you are ready to start your family building. This is the reasons why freezing younger is better, because our bodies naturally lose eggs as we get older. Believe it or not, we have the most number of eggs in our body when we are 5 months in our mother's womb, and that's 4 to 5 million eggs. By the time we're born, we have 1 million eggs. By the time we hit puberty and we first become reproductive, we have 300 to 500,000 eggs. And by the time we hit menopause, we have less than 1,000. This is a chart here. With the purple is when your maximum fertility is, so obviously in the 20s is better. Miscarriage rates obviously get higher when you get older. And the number of normal, genetically normal eggs also decrease as we get older. So again, trying to freeze earlier versus later. How do we check your egg reserve? Which is very important. So to just do a spot check and see how many eggs you have at this moment. We can do a blood test. It's called anti-Mullerian hormone. We can do on the 3rd day of your period FSH hormone and estradiol hormone, and we can do an ultrasound. And here on the lower left, the small little cysts you have means you have more eggs. The fewer little cysts you have means you have fewer eggs. And that's a nice, just quick blood and ultrasound test that you can do and assess your fertility status. So when you are considering this, there's a consultation that happens between your oncologist and us to see if you're a candidate for this. Then you meet with our fertility specialist doctor. When you do meet with us, it could be virtual, it could be in person, and it does involve also meeting with our finance team to see what's covered, what's out of pocket. Our nurse, who goes over the medications, the side effects, and we also have an oncofertility coordinator who helps guide you through the process. In that initial meeting with the physician, we get your history. We speak to the oncologist to see if we can delay those 2 weeks because we are not here to worsen prognosis. And we talk about your medical conditions. Are you stable? Are you a candidate for the anesthesia? We do that initial fertility ovarian reserve testing with the blood and the ultrasound. And we do the blood work that's at the general blood labs, semen analysis if we are considering freezing embryos. And have you had that hereditary genetic testing done yet? Are the results back? And we do offer genetic carrier screening where we're testing for over 500 genetic mutations not related to cancers but to other diseases. Why should you freeze eggs versus embryos? For eggs, it's very common for single women to do this who may or may not have a permanent male partner. If you have ethical concerns, if you have religious concerns, egg freezing is an option. And in the future, you can genetically test if you have any hereditary cancer genes. For embryos, if you have a male partner, you can freeze the eggs that have been fertilized with the sperm, potentially genetically test that embryo for the BRCA mutation, any hereditary cancer mutations, and have it frozen. The number of eggs does not mean that you're definitely going to have a baby, and not all of the eggs will fertilize, not all of the eggs will form that embryo stage. So it's more efficient to do the embryos, but it may be more practical to freeze the eggs. What is the egg and embryo freezing process? We start by doing blood work and ultrasound in our office, and then we start usually hormone injections called gonadotropins, and they're done daily, and they're little needle subcutaneous injections. You come in frequently to the office for that blood and ultrasound monitoring, and maybe 3 days later, 2 days later, and towards the end of those 2 weeks, every day. When the follicles and eggs look ready, we do a trigger shot, and 2 days later, you get surgery under IV sedation anesthesia, where you get an IV, you fall asleep for about 15 to 45 minutes, and while you're sleeping, we do a vaginal ultrasound. We put a needle through the vagina into the ovary, and we aspirate all those little follicles on the right side, and then we do a second needle stick through the vagina to the left ovary, and we aspirate all the follicles on the left side. This is done under anesthesia. People are asleep, they don't feel those needle sticks, and when they wake up, they'll know how many eggs they have. If we are freezing embryos, then we take the sperm that's produced on the day of that egg retrieval, we put the sperm and the eggs together, and we check the next day to see if it fertilized, and we grow them out for 5 or 6 days to this, hopefully, blastocyst stage. Not every egg will fertilize. Not every fertilized egg will make that blastocyst stage. And not every blastocyst embryo is going to be genetically normal. So if you freeze your embryos at 30 years old, 32% of those blastocyst embryos will be genetically abnormal. 68% will be genetically normal. Oh, wait, go back. Okay. If you freeze at the age of 40, 65% of those blastocysts will be genetically abnormal. 35% will be genetically normal. We can do something called pre-implantation genetic testing, PGT. Before it implants, we can genetically test these embryos. And we can test them for the BRCA1, BRCA2 gene, any breast cancer gene mutations, any cancer gene mutations, actually. We can also test it for that genetic screening panel. So if there's concerns of inheriting cystic fibrosis, sickle cell, thalassemias, there's hundreds and hundreds of mutations we can check for. That can be done at that point in time. We can also check it for aneuploidy. Normally, the embryos are supposed to have 46 chromosomes. 23 comes from the egg. 23 comes from the sperm to make 46. Sometimes when the eggs and sperm come together, you may have 47 chromosomes, and if you have, let's say, an extra 21, chromosome number 21, that's Down syndrome, this can also check for that at the same time. And we can also do HLA checks as well. So with these hereditary cancer mutations, I want to stress that you can test the eggs after they've been fertilized. You can test these embryos for these gene cancer mutations and dramatically decrease the risk of this next generation, your children, from inheriting these diseases. Factors that we consider when we're doing these freezes is how old you are, for obvious reasons. Can you have that 2-week delay in treatment? Are there hormone sensitivities to your malignancy? If you're estrogen receptor positive, if you're progesterone receptor positive, guess what hormones potentially are raised when we're doing these fertility cycles? Thankfully, there have been studies published looking exactly at this. And there have been no significant associations between short-term gonadotropins, those hormone injections use, and an increased risk of breast cancer or a poor prognosis of breast cancer. One of the best studies I thought was published in 2022. It was a meta-analysis published in the British Journal Society Open, where they reviewed 25 studies that encompassed over 600,000 participants and found that there was no association with an increase of breast cancer with more than 10 years of follow-up. And I think that's an excellent study to be looking at and continue to look at. Other fertility options, as I mentioned, are egg donation, where there are eggs frozen at a bank, sperm donation, where there are sperms frozen at a sperm bank, gestational surrogacy if applied, and that's having someone else is carrying the pregnancy. There is embryo donations where people are done with their childbearing and have donated their embryos. There's adoption, there's foster care, and there's also the choice to not have children. And again, putting into the equation, we look at your age. What is your desire for having the option to have children in the future? Is there a partner involved? Are you single? Is there a significant other? Is it a he or a she? What is your source of your egg, sperm, and uterus ultimately is what we need to know. Is there presence of cancer on the ovaries? Is the person healthy and stable, or are they medically unstable? Are there anesthesia risks? How's the airway? Is there sleep apnea? What's their body mass index? Is their blood pressure, diabetes under control or not? Can we access those ovaries with a vaginal ultrasound? Sometimes we do abdominal retrievals as well. And is there a hormone sensitivity to the cancer? Because if there's actually things we do in our cycle to lower the chances of the estrogen rising, using aromatase inhibitors, using gonadotropin-releasing agonist triggers, and ultimately lowering that estrogen. And is there an actual test positive for the hereditary cancer mutations? After cancer, people do come back to us hoping to have children, and if they have something frozen, we work with that. If they don't, we can assess their fertility at that point in time and decide where we go from here. Frequently asked questions that I get when we're talking about freezing eggs and or embryos is, how many should I freeze? And the younger you are, the fewer eggs you need. The older you are, the more eggs you need. If you froze 20 eggs at 30 to 35, 90% chance you'll have a live birth. If you froze 20 eggs at the age of 40, 51% chance you'll have a live birth. Will I undergo menopause sooner by freezing my eggs? The answer is no. It does not change your menopause age at all. We lose our eggs as we get older. We're capturing a moment, and that moment is, if you're younger, more eggs, less abnormal eggs. Will my eggs undergo freezer burn? We use a vitrification method, which is an instant freeze with liquid nitrogen. So it does not notice the passage of time. It does not age. Your eggs do not age. And they don't undergo freezer burn. So they thaw, they do 95%, we get a 95% survival rate, which is fantastic. And I think it's just giving people options by doing that. How long can I freeze my eggs for? It's the same method that we're freezing with embryos, and the embryos have a much longer history of freezing. So I think this summer somebody had 30-year-old embryos that were thawed, and obviously it was an embryo donation, and the couple had a beautiful, healthy baby, and they were 30-year-old embryos. Eggs can do the same thing. Is there a higher likelihood of birth defects in frozen eggs? A very, very well looked at topic. So these are meta-analysis studies that showed no increase in chromosomal abnormalities, no increase in congenital anomalies, and no increase in adverse obstetrical outcomes. Dr. Nicole Noyes, Dr. Eleanor Porcu, Dr. Andrea Barini, who initially started the egg freeze, and Porcu and Barini are from Italy, where they only freeze eggs because of religious reasons, have great data looking at this, and they found that compared with congenital anomalies occurring in naturally conceived infants, there was no difference in birth defects. Dr. Drunckenmiller-Cascante also did a study and basically found that the age of freezing and the number of mature eggs that were thawed is predictive of live birth. So the younger you are, the more eggs you have frozen that survive the thaw, the better your chances were. For risks of fertility preservations, unfortunately, nobody can be guaranteed if you do freeze that you will definitely have a child. Because there are needles involved with the egg retrieval, there's bleeding and infection, and it's probably maybe 5% for bleeding, 1% for infection. It's quite low. There's anesthesia risks for doing IV sedation, and then there's the delay of 2 weeks in order to do the egg retrievals and freeze eggs and or embryo, and is that going to affect your prognosis? And again, consultation with your oncology team to decide this. If you happen to be young, because we're seeing more and more young people getting breast cancers now, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, where you're producing too many eggs, can be a factor, and there are treatment protocols that we implement to minimize that from happening. Men can freeze sperm, can freeze several samples. Does insurance cover any of this freezing? Eggs, embryos, sperm? And New York State did mandate medical fertility preservation in 2020. Very happy that they did that, and there was a whole team of physicians that went door to door to the politicians to let them know that we can actually freeze and preserve fertility for our patients. And when they say medical indications, they're talking about what they refer to iatric permanent sterilization, getting chemo, getting surgery, getting radiation would decrease and or eliminate your fertility potential. This mandate applies to large group companies. So the employer must have at least 100 to 1,000 employees. It has to be a company that's based in New York State, because if it's based elsewhere, it will be the law of that particular state, whether it's covered or not. And the mandate does not apply to large, extra large group self-funded companies that have over 1,000 employees, but a lot of these extra large group companies do cover it anyway. And the small group companies where you have less than 100 employees may or may not be covered. The costs for doing this, ART cycles and freezing, if you are covered under the mandate, the evaluation, that consult is covered, the blood tests are covered, the monitoring's covered, the anesthesia's covered, the retrieval's covered, freezing is covered, the medication's covered. The genetic carrier screening test may or may not be covered. So in summary, we have the option to choose fertility preservation. And I think it's important for women to get themselves educated, learn about their fertility, learn their fertility options, and whether they have coverage or not. As Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. There is life after cancer. There is hope after cancer. And I believe that that is what fertility preservation is all about. This talk is in memory of my mentor and friend, Dr. Mary Kreiner. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just have one question, a point of clarity. Can the eggs be tested for the mutation, or is it just the embryo is tested? So when you harvest the eggs, are they tested?
Excellent question. We don't test the eggs. They can be, but we don't. We test the embryos because once you test the embryos, you can also do the aneuploidy testing. And if you only test eggs, you're testing 50% of the mutations. You're 15% of the DNA. You're missing the whole sperm component. So you want to do 100%. So if you're freezing eggs, you don't know if that egg actually has the gene. And we assume that your 50% will actually have that mutation once we end up testing them.
Yeah, I have a question. If a woman has breast cancer and is negative for the BRCA gene, does that mean her children are negative and you don't have to test further, or do you need the other spouse to test for it?
If who has the cancer?
Let's say, so I have breast cancer, no BRCA gene. Okay, my husband's deceased, so we can't test him. Are my kids free of worry about getting having the BRCA gene, or do they have to be tested?
If you don't have it and they are your children, then they generally do not test the children. If there's a high prevalence in the family, then they might be testing. And as I mentioned, there are more than just BRCA gene mutations. There's a ton of other mutations. So if the panel has been checked a while ago, 15 years ago, I would retest at this stage because new gene mutations have been found.
But it follows the mother, not both parents?
It does.
Just the mother?
Both parents. It follows both parents. So if the father actually had the breast cancer mutation, those kids are at 50% chance risk of inheriting that gene, even if you're testing negative.
Right, so if I was just tested, I don't have it, my husband's deceased, my kids still have to be tested?
Again, I think if nobody else in the family has it, no, but people always screen, you know, detections. There may not be a mutation that's found yet for this breast cancer, and so early screening is definitely in order, depending on how old you are when you first got diagnosed as well. There's a whole bunch of factors. They use a Gale model. There's actually an app online where you can screen and say, hey, this is somebody who should be tested, this is somebody who shouldn't be, screened earlier versus later.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more question over here.
I have one more too.
Okay.
I've had several Medicaid patients that we've tried to send for reproductive services or evaluation prior to starting treatment, and have found that Medicaid is not an insurance that will cover any of this. Do you have any suggestions?
Medicaid is a federal insurance, and they don't cover it, and it's very frustrating. And back in the day when I was in my own practice, we made it a point to accept patients in, give them an at cost to freeze their eggs, because we felt very strongly. And there was a group of us that went door to door with these politicians and explained to them the importance of being able to freeze your eggs, that women in New York, their constituents, were actually surviving cancer, and that there was medical technology that was available to preserve their fertility. And that's how we got that mandate passed in 2020. But Medicaid, unfortunately, fits under a different umbrella, which has been rather challenging.
We have one more question over here.
Hi, my name is Eugenia. I have a question. Why do you all talk a lot about the BRCA gene 1 and 2, but what happens with the people that have the PAL2 gene? I have the PAL2 gene. Yep. That's number 1. And number 2, should my nieces or my daughter and everybody be tested? Because it runs in my paternal family, but I had great aunts that had it, but none of their kids had it. So it's so crazy how it goes around the family. I don't understand too much.
Right. When I listed all those other breast cancer gene mutations, if you're in that panel, and that one is definitely in there, you definitely could be freezing your eggs too, or embryos, and definitely your family members should be checked. They have a 50% chance of inheriting that gene mutation. Thank you.
Do we
Thank you so much. Now it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Geralyn Lucas. Many of you may know Geralyn as the author of Why I Wore Lipstick to My Mastectomy, which has inspired audiences around the world through both her best-selling book, and it also became an Emmy-nominated film on Lifetime television. Let's take a look.
Time for a new list. 1, get real breast removed, and 2, shop for new breast. This is one accessory you don't skimp on. This is when you throw down the credit card and say, give me the Jimmy Choo boobs.
They're not real. Sorry? You were looking at my breasts. They're not real. Oh, no one can tell. I can wear backless dresses and spaghetti straps for the first time in my life.
They look great.
I had my breasts and ovaries removed 2 years ago. Keel is the best boob reconstruction guy in the city.
How long have you had cancer?
Oh, I never had cancer, but I tested positive for the gene.
You had all of that surgery just in case?
I felt like a walking time bomb. My grandmother and my mother and 2 of my aunts had it. Seemed like it was just a matter of time, so I took control. You want to see them?
Oh, yes.
I show everyone.
Wow.
They're good.
They look great.
They feel natural too. You want to feel? Oh, come on. It's okay. My husband loves them as much as I do.
Hope he doesn't mind sharing.
Before becoming an author, Geralyn was an Emmy-winning TV producer with roles at 2020 and Lifetime Networks, where she led acclaimed campaigns and worked with stars like Beyoncé, Taylor Swift, and Nicole Kidman. She is an honors graduate of the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism and the Annenberg School for Communications at the University of Pennsylvania. Geralyn is a global breast cancer advocate whose bold comedic voice has redefined the way we talk about cancer. Let's take a look at one of her projects to inspire women to get screened.
My name is Geralyn Lucas. I wrote the book, Why I Wore Lipstick to My Mastectomy, which also became a Lifetime movie. I've traveled around the world meeting thousands of women to tell them how early detection saved my life. Now I want to save yours. I just got so sick of hearing women say, oh, a mammogram, doesn't that hurt? I'm like, dude, you just got an extreme bikini wax. What are you talking about?
Dawn and I are traveling around the city today looking for ouch moments.
What's the most painful thing you've ever done for beauty? Brazilian.
Eyebrow tweezing is like a 7 for me.
Bikini wax is an 8.
Upper lip laser and a 7.
Porcelain veneers, full set of teeth, 10 and a half.
Ow.
Suffering in shoes every day. Ow.
I sprayed the deodorant in my vagina, so it was really painful.
I gauged my ears. Ouch. From 1 to 10, it's about an 11.
A full-on facelift. I mean...
Ouch! I can't get it over my butt. Do you think that this could do organ damage? I'm gonna show you that all those treatments hurt so much more than feeling your boobies or getting a little squished in a mammogram.
Gimme.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect. I love that. Please join me in welcoming Geralyn Lucas.
Ooh, hi everyone. So before I say anything about my story, where's Janine, Lisa? I want to thank these ladies for putting on this wonderful day. Thank you for all your hard work. I also want to thank the New York Plastic Surgical Group, again, for putting on this beautiful day. And it means so much to us when we are going through breast cancer treatments to be able to be put back together again, get those Jimmy Choo boobs. Very important. I'd like to ask the doctors who worked on today to stand. Doctors Tommaso Adana, where are you? Are you here? Oh, okay, he's busy taking care of his patients. Dr. Matthew Kilgo, Dr. Thomas Davenport, Dr. Jerry Chang, Dr. Noel Natali, and this one is hard, Dr. Haritha Viramachenny, okay. But seriously, all the nurses, all the survivors, all the caretakers, advocates who came out today, thank you. Thanks for being here. And I want to thank Stacy Sager. For those of you who were here last year, she nominated me to speak this year. And we met, does anyone remember how we met? Trivia? In a bathroom in New York City, a public restroom. My doctor told her to call me to see what I looked like after my breast reconstruction. So it was like a scene in that movie where I just said, hi, and then lifted up my shirt. It was amazing. So in my movie, you must be surprised, I was played by a tall blonde. And they said, are you upset? I'm like, are you kidding? Brilliant casting, hair falls out anyway. But I actually want to thank Patti LaBelle. She starred in my movie. She had a lot of family members who died of breast cancer, and she wanted to reach out to Black women to talk about getting screened. I admire her so much. She forgot all her lines when she got on set. She was actually in the hospital in a real chemo room, and she had been there too many times. And the director said, Patti, don't worry, just tell me what you're feeling. She said, I'm gonna be fly until I die. I'm gonna wear my bling bling and everything. And Miss Patti LaBelle came to set with her own bling bling, so it was fantastic. So in my ouch video, we stopped it right before I got the Brazilian, and I couldn't walk. And that day, what I did was I set up an ouchometer. I got so sick of women saying a mammogram hurt. I was like, wait, you had Botox? You're wearing high heels, which my heels right now are giving me a bad headache. So putting on a Spanx. By the way, I judge appearances based on the level of Spanx I'm wearing, and today I put on a really good one for all of you, so really excited to be here. But our conclusion at the end of the day was that young women knew more about hair removal than they did about breast health. It was so upsetting. And what I did was I took my ouch video to ABC News, where I used to work, and we created something called ABC News Goes Pink, and we redid the ouch video, and we had one correspondent do a mammogram. She was 40, There was controversy about 40 versus 50. She didn't have family history. She had the prescription at the bottom of her purse. What do you know? She was diagnosed with breast cancer. It made headlines around the world. So screening is very important. If anyone here is overdue for her mammogram, is scared to go, I'll go with you. I mean it. If anyone here has not had her mammogram, has not been checked, come find me afterwards and we'll do it together. So I want to tell you about my first speech. So it is at Jacob Javits Center, and they said 700 women were going to come. It was with Self Magazine, a wellness expo. And I've never spoken to 700 women, so I had to see my therapist 3 times that week. And I don't look anything like my book jacket, very airbrushed, no resemblance, so I was scared to make an appearance with her. So anyway, I'm walking into Jacob Javits, and I see this huge line and all this excitement. Women are going crazy, and I'm like, oh my God, my peeps. No, there's a big sign, and it says, killer butt. And there is a woman standing there, and she does have a killer butt, and she has a 3-point video how to get a killer butt, and everyone wants to go to her speech. I sort of want to go to her speech, but I have to give my own speech. So I walk into my room. There's no one outside, and I thought they all wanted a good seat. They're inside. Well, I walk in, and it's like 700 seats. And all the way in the last row is one woman, and she's crying. So I could make a run for it, because she wouldn't know I stood her up, and go back to kill her butt. But I do the walk of shame. I walk all the way over. I introduce myself. And she says, my name is Janina, and I'm having a mastectomy tomorrow. She said, I've never met anyone who had a mastectomy before. My daughter saw this flyer. I had to come meet you. All my doctors said I'm going to be fine. Everyone said I'll be fine. But they've never had a mastectomy. And what she said next took my breath away. She said, I drove 5.5 hours to meet you. Oh. Well, I realized in that moment God was playing a very funny trick on me. You see, I thought, if I write my book and I reach just one woman and help her the way other women help me, I will have done something with this tragedy. And the next day, her daughter sent me a photo of her on the gurney, clutching my book. Now, Janina was kind of a lumberjack. She was wearing like a flannel shirt and boots, not even a chapstick girl. But that morning, she had on bright red lipstick. And that feeling of service and being there for someone is indescribable. And it's what we're doing today. We're showing up for each other. So thank you for being here. I want to share another story about the power of one woman to really change my world. One woman who saved my life, my angel. Does anyone here believe in angels? I'm a big believer. So my husband was taking care of a 28-year-old woman. He was the breast resident, and that's not how we met. It sounds very juicy. But he was on the breast cancer rotation when I met him, and a woman came in. She was 28. She had been turned away by 3 clinics. She didn't speak English. She had a 4-year-old little boy with her, no insurance. No one believed her, said she was too young, and by the time my husband did the mastectomy, it was too late and had already spread, and she passed away. And my husband would come home at night and say, someone you know, someone you love is going to have breast cancer. No one in my family had it. I didn't know anyone who had it. He said, 1 in 11 women, now it's 1 in 8. He said, you have to do breast exam. I did a breast exam and found a lump. because of that 28-year-old woman. I never knew you could get breast cancer in your 20s. I was only 27. I thought my mom had to have it. I thought you had to be 40. Your grandmother had to have it. I promised to tell her story. And today, I actually volunteer at an underserved breast clinic where we have translators, where we treat women who don't have insurance. And I want to thank all of you because by being here with the stipend I receive for speaking here, I am donating it to that clinic. So you're saving lives today. So I want to tell you about the day I became a survivor. Different people define it differently. Maybe it's the day you were diagnosed, the day you stopped your chemo. Well, if you liked me up until this point, just bear with me. It's my 28th birthday, and I'm having my mastectomy the next day. They wouldn't operate on me on my birthday. I just wanted to get it over with. I didn't want anyone to sing me happy birthday. I just wanted to hit 30. Well, I decided I needed some attention before it all went away. I made a controversial decision to go out and get street harassed. I call it my last hurrah, strut what you've got while you still got it before your mastectomy. And I put on my best jeans, and I went out to hail a cab, and 2 cabs nearly crashed to pick me up. And I thought, wow, maybe these jeans are working. But then I realized it was August. I was stuck in the city having a mastectomy. Everyone else was at the beach. Well, I got into the cab, and the cab driver said, "Lady, I saw you from 2 blocks away. I nearly crashed my cab to pick you up." And I realized, be careful what you wish for. Oh gosh, I got to talk to him. He risked a higher insurance rate. Well, La Bamba house version was blaring, and he had a disco ball in his rearview mirror. And next thing I know, I'm in a dancing cab. Has anyone here ever been in a dancing cab? It goes something like gas, brake, to the beat of La Bamba. And then he says, "Lady, I bet you would look so hot on the dance floor. Do you want to go dancing with me?" And all I'm thinking is, how am I going to dance with one boob? How am I going to dance when I'm bald? And this chapter in my book is called I Need to Get It Off My Chest. And it's about how when I was first diagnosed, I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to keep it a secret. But then I started something I called cancer confessing. I told the deli guy. I asked my doorman if I should have a mastectomy or a lumpectomy. It just got to be too much. And I realized this was my ultimate test to get it off my chest. I took a deep breath. I paused. I said, "Sir, I don't think you're going to want to dance with me because tomorrow I'm having my right breast removed. And after that, all my hair is going to fall out. Do you really want to take me dancing?" Well, next thing I know, we are parked at a bus stop, which is like an immediate, huge parking violation. So I knew something important was about to happen. He stops the cab. He comes into the back seat. He grabs my hand, and he says, "Lady, I have one ball." Now, okay, I'm thinking people in New York are so desperate to meet people. Like, this guy is just a pervert trying to pick me up, making up a story, so he knew he needed to add credibility. So he said, "Lady, I had testicular cancer. I was treated at Sloan Kettering Hospital. I'm okay, you will be too." Well, next thing you know, this frog has turned into my prince. He kisses my hand. He doesn't charge me a fare. And I thought, if an about-to-be one-boobed woman and a one-bald man could find each other in a city of millions and figure out this truth within a 7-minute cab ride, I knew my luck was going to change. And this angel, this one bald angel, appeared to show me I could be whole after my mastectomy. You know, in the movie, he says, "Lady, I even dance better with one ball." And you know what? I dance better with one boob. And you know, maybe that's the day I realized what survivors do. They risk an accident, they're out there living, just on the edge, so happy to be alive, and we find each other. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about how my story ends, because I was actually asked to take a photo, a topless photo by Self magazine, and they wanted to show that you could be beautiful after a mastectomy. And you see, I wasn't convinced. I had never really looked at myself. I had never really accepted myself. And I thought, I'm just going to cheat. It's going to be a small photo. I won't have to look at it. Well, wouldn't you know, I show up at the studio, and it's incredible. The photographer takes life-size Polaroids. And it's amazing because I thought I could wear a cloak. I actually thought it would be artistic. I could cover myself. And she said, take off your shirt, take off your bra, put your hands on your hips. And I thought, oh no. Well, in that moment, I was really missing my nipple because I didn't realize that having a mastectomy for me meant losing a nipple too. And I was with my mom when we were at a plastic surgeon's office, and she told us that she made a museum quality nipple. She said it was a Monet water lily. It was a Seurat. It was impressionistic. It would dance, that a true nipple wasn't just one color. My mom was so impressed with this nipple talk. And she kept calling me all the time, sweetie, when are you gonna get the nipple? You're gonna feel so complete. And as only a mom could become, she became my nipple nag. You're gonna get the nipple, the nipple. Well, for me, I felt like it would be like a fake Prada bag. I would know it was fake. My husband would know it was fake. I've seen so many beautiful nipples, by the way. They're gorgeous. But that day I was missing my nipple. I decided at the end of my scar to get a tattoo of a heart. I never knew the root of the word courage was heart. It's about following your heart. And I decided to get wings to remind me of all the angels that showed me the way. Well, she took the photo and then she hung it up to develop. It was an instant Polaroid. And this chapter is called Developing. And there are chunks of black and white and gray. And I'm kind of hiding my eyes, like there's no way I want to look. I'm calculating how large my scar is going to be. And I'm so ashamed. Well, she walks over to me and she looks at me and she says, look at yourself. Look at your eyes. And I look at my eyes and the craziest thing happens. It is the first time I ever saw a photo that I liked of myself, where I felt beautiful. And how could that be? Because there was this large scar. I saw my journey, I saw my courage, and I found my inner cleavage. That's what it was. I saw my inner cleavage that day. And the moment was so special, but it kind of faded as soon as the magazine came out. I thought about every ex-boyfriend seeing this image, every math teacher who had given me a C. I was horrified. Well, it was amazing. I took to bed and I received an email from a young woman She had gone to her plastic surgeon. She was told she needed a double mastectomy. She left in tears. She went to the newsstand. She bought Self magazine. She saw my photo. She went back to the doctor's office and told the doctor she wanted to look just like me. That one woman. Isn't that amazing what happens when you put yourself out there? It's incredible. I really like to think that my book is for women, all women, to really see themselves, to not go to the first thing that you don't like in the photo, to promise yourself you're going to see your eyes and see your journey and see your courage and see your beauty. I also want to tell you about having children. They told me I couldn't have kids when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I would die if I had children with hormones. And I was working at 2020, and there was a story that I was assigned. It was called Messages from Mom. A mom who was dying of breast cancer and making videos for her 5-year-old daughter. Some of you might have seen that story. It was also on Oprah. It was a beautiful story. So I actually called the mom, and it was incredible because what she said to me, she was scared her story was going to be too sensationalistic. And what was amazing was that I told her I was a survivor to gain her trust. And she said, I don't want you to work on this story. I'm going to die, and I don't want you to go through that. And I said to her, teach me. Teach me. I want to have children. Teach me. Well, when she first started taping, she kept hitting pause because she knew her daughter would be watching and she'd be gone. But then she became a mad woman taping through the night, everything from what to do when daddy remarries, how to wear makeup. And, you know, when Aaron died, that's when I decided that I could get pregnant, because love always finds a way, doesn't it? And it was amazing. I actually wore lipstick to my C-section. I breastfed with one boob. I couldn't believe I got to leave the hospital. Instead of leaving something behind, I left with a baby. She was a Leo, not Cancer. It was kind of on the, it was a little tricky there for a moment. And she was my miracle, who became a little mean, for anyone who has a daughter. But I'd actually like to tell you why I wore lipstick to my mastectomy the morning of my mastectomy. Do I have any red lipstick ladies here? Love it. So I was always a gloss girl, and I would look at you when you wore it and when you put it on in the mirror in the restroom, and every stroke seemed to say, notice me, I deserve this. I wasn't that daring yet. But that morning, I decided to become the woman I never thought I could be. I looked down at my gown, and it said, property of Mount Sinai Hospital. Strangely, I felt I had become property of Mount Sinai Hospital. And that's when I thought about the lipstick. I wanted to be so far away from the scalpel. I wanted to be glamorous. I wanted to announce to the room all the places I'd wear lipstick on my own terms next time. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if the doctor looked over while I was intubated, he saw these bright red lips. Maybe I would look a little bit sexy. Maybe the nurses would think I was sassy because it perfectly matched the blood on the operating room table. And you know, when they woke me up in recovery, the nurse said, breathe, breathe. And then she said, girl, what kind of lipstick do you have on? That stayed on for 6 hours. And I want the brand. And it was amazing because nurses ran from cardiology, from labor and delivery. They wanted to see the girl with the lipstick that lasted. And it felt a little like Frank Sinatra, like I did it my way. And, you know, it was amazing. After I had my mastectomy and going through chemo, everyone told me I was living with risk. Risk of never having children, risk of infection, risk of my cancer coming back. I decided living with risk was going to make me risque. And every chemo, my skirts got shorter, my sweaters got tighter, which was really hard to do, going through reconstruction. One side's an A, one side's an E, and my heels got higher. And hearing them click against the hospital floor was so hopeful. Being here today with all of you is so hopeful. Are there any survivors who would like to join me on stage? I just want to do a very quick reading from my book, All the Places I've Worn My Lipstick, and I'd like to dedicate it to all of you. If anyone wants to join me, I would be so honored. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Here, come here. Thank you. I'm not this tall, by the way. I'm standing on a crate. And it's amazing because I knew that I was pregnant again. They had told me I was in menopause, but I was craving a hot open turkey sandwich with gravy in July. I had 3 negative pregnancy tests. My tumor levels were through the roof because placental growth can mimic tumor levels. And I went to see a doctor at Sloan Kettering who told me, "You have a spot on your lung, your cancer's back." And I said, "I think I'm pregnant." She said, "You'll die if you have the baby, if you are pregnant." Well, wouldn't you know that she was killed by a speeding ambulance in front of Sloan Kettering Hospital. And I thought, who's going to tell me when I'm going to die? Oh no, my doctor died. Like, what am I going to do? Well, I did have the baby, and he was born on Easter. He's my Easter bunny. He just hopped into my life, and he's so much nicer to me than my daughter. He just loves me, and it's like amazing. And my mom keeps saying it's hard to raise a feminist, and then she'll say, "You were worse." But I am so lucky. I named my daughter Sky because during my chemo, I couldn't stand needles, and I would do hypnosis and say, "I'm like the sky. Nothing can stick to me." So the last chapter is called "The Sky's the Limit." It's all the places I've worn my lipstick. And I'm so moved seeing all of you. Thank you for being up here. Thank you. I knew there was a lot of inner cleavage in the room, and I knew there were a lot of Jimmy Choo boobs in the room, but I'm overwhelmed. So it's amazing, all the places I've worn my lipstick, places I never dreamed I'd be on the morning of my mastectomy. I wore lipstick to the White House to meet the president while on assignment for Lifetime Television, to Sky's first day of preschool, and her kindergarten interviews. In New York City, you have to interview for kindergarten. My kids bombed all the interviews. I wore lipstick to my brother Howard's wedding when I first held his daughter Stella in my arms. I wore lipstick to my mom's 60th birthday. I got lipstick all over my husband Tyler when I kissed him on our 10-year wedding anniversary in St. Thomas under the stars. It's been 33 years. We're in couples counseling. We're hanging on. And there are so many places I still want to wear my lipstick to Sky's wedding. I want to live to watch Sky wear lipstick. Actually, I want to be one of those older, hunched over ladies who wears bright red lipstick. There are so many of them in the streets of New York City. I never really understood it, but now I do. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't done that breast exam and saved my life. All the moments, all the lipstick shades I would have missed. I still think of all the women I've met who will never get to wear lipstick. Their beautiful faces and their dreams keep me up at night. It was hard to imagine I could ever wear lipstick again. I was scared the other moments wouldn't live up to my defining one, just wearing lipstick to drink a cup of coffee, to go to work, to go to the movies. But maybe that's what's so special about them now. They're so ordinary. Each moment I'm living feels especially lipstick worthy. But there's a strange residue from that day I've never been able to wipe off my lips. Each time I put it on is a moment of reflection, of appreciation, that I'm not in the hospital or sick from my cancer treatments. I am so free without my IV line. Each time I wear it, I'm emboldened by the memory of that day, the IV line in my arm, my surgical gown on with my butt hanging out, and my perfectly applied lipstick. I swear I can still taste that hope. I taste the hope in this room. I want to thank you all so much for creating this very special community of connectedness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Geralyn. And on behalf of New York Plastic Surgical Group and all of us here today, we'd like to thank you for your honesty, bravery, and all the inspiration that you bring.
Thank you so much for your humor and your kindness. I can't wait to read your book. We'd like to present you with the 2025 Breast Cancer Summit Lifetime Achievement Award.